everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Louis Trujillo.
Present.
Councilor David Romero.
Here.
Councilor Elaine Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilor Michael Montoya.
Present.
Councilor David Olivari Jr.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a quorum.
Mr. District Attorney, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Go ahead.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tomas. I'd like to just take a moment to keep in mind all the people in our community who have dealt with domestic violence in one way or the other. And in fact, we most recently lost a beloved coach and a retired educator to violence over the weekend, and touched the whole community. And I'd like to just keep all the victims of domestic violence in mind, and also recognize that it's alive and well and affecting many lives in our community. And we could just take a moment of silence for the family of Virginia and Ismael Lujan. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I see 3 items on this agenda, and I believe we tabled one of the items for this meeting, specifically for this meeting, and the other item number, I guess the amendments for the city charter is the other item. This meeting was supposed to be particularly just for that item, and I see another item on here, item number 2, but I believe, Mr. City Attorney, do you have anything?
I will be addressing that
Oh, you will
when
be
we
addressing-
get there, yes.
Okay, well, I would, I don't know if it's proper to say that I'd like to have that removed from the agenda for this time.
It won't be removed, but when we get there to that agenda item, I will make a motion. I will entertain a motion to table. I just have to discuss it before. Yes.
Thanks for the clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and approve this agenda.
There's a motion on the floor by Councilman Montoya. Second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Olivari. Roll call, please.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilor Montoya.
Yes.
Councilor Romero.
Yes.
Councilor Olivari Jr.
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Olivari Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item of business is public input. We have no public input at this time. Moving on to mayor's appointments, reports, recognitions, and proclamations.
Thank you. We do have a proclamation for domestic violence awareness, and I'd like to invite the staff from the district attorney's office to come forward. Ashley works so hard, clear out with a bunch of stuff, and of course Tomas. Whereas October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which provides an excellent opportunity for our community to learn more about preventing domestic violence, to show support for those affected. And whereas in just one day across the United States, its territories, nearly 75,000 victims of domestic violence sought service from the domestic violence service programs and shelters. That's in doing more than 9,000 requests for services, including emergency shelter, housing, transportation, child care, and legal representation that could not be met because programs lack the resources to meet victims' needs. And whereas the impact of domestic violence and directly affecting individuals and society as a whole, here in this community, throughout the United States and throughout the world. And whereas the city of Las Vegas stands behind the strong message that there is no place for domestic violence in our community, in partnership with the Fourth Judicial District Attorney's Office, on December 21st, 2021, at 6 p.m., we will join together at the historic Plaza Park for a day of unity, where we will hold a candlelight vigil to help raise awareness, remember the lives lost to domestic violence, and to give hope to those still living with the abuse. And whereas, through this proclamation, we pledge to ensure that victims of domestic violence know that they are not alone, and that our community is there to help them as they courageously move forward. And therefore, I, Mayor Lou Trujillo, proclaim, and along with the governing body, proclaim October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thank you, Mr. District Attorney. If you'd like to say any words, you're welcome to.
Yes. If you would, Mr. Mayor, thanks, I appreciate it, and I want to thank Mayor and Council and the community as a whole. I think we started this meeting with a moment of silence on the tragic loss of Ms. Lujan. It didn't happen in our community, but she's from our community. A real strong person within the community. A member of the West Las Vegas schools. Such a tragic loss, and domestic violence. And how that is at the onset of early case in Albuquerque. But that's precisely what domestic violence can lead to. It starts with small things that maybe we forgive our significant other. But unless we address it, it can lead to the tragic end that we are suffering and going through this past week. So domestic violence, just as you indicated, touches everybody, the entire community. And in our office, approximately 10% of our cases over the last 16 years are domestic violence related. And that hasn't changed, unfortunately. And we provide services. There are service providers within our community. We have a victim advocacy group within the district attorney's office. Ashley Archuleta is our designated victim advocate, and we have another victim advocate within our office. And we provide services, we provide direction, and hopefully get them to the resources they need, both the offender and the victim. And it's through the judicial system, obviously. So we appreciate this because the real issue with domestic violence is creating a sense of awareness. Many people bring the challenge of the victim, say, well, why don't you leave? And are very judgmental of that individual. We must stop that. Because there are a number of reasons why a victim in a domestic violence kind of relationship does not leave. It could be economic. It could be the emotion. They're actually attached to and in love with the individual. So there are reasons. So instead of being judgmental of these individuals, we must lend a helping hand. Create an opportunity to stop this behavior. Listen. And I think that's probably the most important thing that our victim advocates do is listen and not be judgmental. So I want to thank the mayor and council, the governing body, the entire community, the city of Las Vegas, to create awareness. I also want to applaud the governing body, the mayor and council. We were talking to a couple of councilors right before the meeting. A lot of positive things are happening in this community. We must latch on to them. And those that are the naysayers, they will get on board. I went to the event that was held this past weekend, the recreation center, Rodriguez Park. It was amazing. The resources that are being brought to this community. And the hard efforts of this governing body, obviously our legislators, our governor. But it starts here. It starts with you, 5 individuals. So I want to say thank you on behalf, at least for my office and me personally. You know, there's a lot, like I said, a lot of positive things in this community. The streets are being worked on. I know the county is working with the city and 100% community with the treatment facility. We're looking at making a treatment facility to address substance abuse. Because many of these domestic violence cases are a result of an individual being under the influence. And those are actually the allegations with respect to that tragedy that happened this weekend. That young man was under the influence. So, I just want to say thank you on behalf of our office, on behalf of my staff. I have a hard-working staff. And I look forward to working with you hand in hand with your chief, with your attorney, and with your council, and with your city manager. And we look forward to working closely with you.
Thank you. I'd like to. We appreciate all your involvement too, Tomas. Dr. Rodriguez?
I appreciate your kind comments, but I disagree with you on a couple of issues. One is that we're not doing enough. Domestic violence has been around for decades,
Agreed.
for centuries. And often we are caught in this culture of looking at domestic violence from the view of traditional husband and wife, spouses, where domestic violence extends beyond that, much beyond that. You know, we look at domestic violence, in looking at through sociology views and say, you know, domestic violence is brothers and sisters, uncles and aunts, and I get calls all the time, you know, in regards to not having enough resources. The fact that our police are not trained to deal with a lot of those domestic violence issues, and they're seeing it from a traditional way of looking at domestic violence. That has to change. And the only way that changes, and again, I appreciate your kind comments, the only way that changes is by putting more money, you know, to those type of services, and for the community as a whole to get involved. Not just saying, okay, I give money to an organization, I can wash my hands and they're going to take care of the issue, and I don't have to worry about it. No, it has to be a community effort. It has to be right resources going, and it can't, you know, we have to really get people trained. And if that requires getting more money to the police to be trained, more money for the advocacy, if that means bringing on more people for advocacy, that's what we need to do. So again, I appreciate your kind words, but I disagree that we're not doing enough.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
I'm willing to support that.
I agree with you. I think there is much more to be done. Because the numbers, as I indicated, are constant. They haven't changed
Yes.
over the 17 years that I've been with the district attorney's office. They haven't changed.
And that's only reported. We have a
Agreed.
lot of domestic that doesn't get reported.
Agreed. And so I agree that there needs to be more. But I can tell you, those that are stepping up to the plate are indeed doing a service for the community. Now, is it sufficient? I agree. There was still more to be done.
Yes,
And
much
and
more.
I've said, those who are given much is expected. And quite honestly, it is us as electeds, us as leaders, there's an expectation that we must give more, if we are given more. So I agree with you, Ms. Rodriguez, and we look forward to working with you as an individual and as an
And my comments aren't to diminish the efforts of what's being done. I just think it's an emergency situation that needs more resources, and we need to heighten that to an
At
emergency
present,
situation.
I have on my caseload 2 homicide cases that are domestic violence driven. We're going to go to trial on those, and it was domestic violence. So I agree with you. There still is a lot of work to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Romero?
Could I just make one comment? I just want to thank you, Mr. Clayton, Mr. D. Clayton, that ever since you were elected to office, I see you somewhere in the community, a community event or something every 2 weeks, every month, and I mean, so you're visible out in the community, which that's a positive. To be honest, we've seen that effort made before, and that's one thing that, you once you got elected, you made sure of that, and you're out and about, you're interacting with all the different agencies and that publicly. I mean, I know before, it was behind the scenes, and I think it's important that the networking that's happening between the city, the DA's office, it's a lot more visible to the public, so thank you for that, and all your staff.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor.
Next, Squire.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton, for everything that your office does for Las Vegas. Again, have seen you in all these organizations involved in the community, involved in the garden union on the Railroad Avenue and so forth. I do believe you're absolutely true. As far as we're doing the best we can with what we got right now. I think this administration has done more than three prior administrations as far as like the Rodriguez Park complex. I know there's opposition as to why we did that and why we went for that funding, but you know what? Life starts at a very early age, and I think that as the community grows, our children grow, and if we teach them well and teach them to be out in the baseball fields instead of behind bars, I mean, that's a good thing. That's a start. If we fix our streets, if we fix our lighting, right now our city manager's working real hard to see if we can transfer all our LED lightings in town to, our regular lighting to LED lighting, for safetyness of the public, for safetyness at any hours of the night, in any neighborhood. So, we are working towards building more canopies at our parks, bringing playground equipment. A lot of things are happening. We can't be, we're not letting the public know everything that's going on in this community. But eventually we will. Our mayor is going to get a half page in the optics so we can let the public know of all the exciting things that are happening with their community, with our different organizations in town, because none of that sometimes is heard by anybody. They're too busy dealing with the challenges of life, not enough income, the drug issue, and the breaking of homes, of relationships, and so forth. It's a struggle. We're living in a world of struggles right now, more than ever. And I don't know if it's going to get any better, but we'll work at it. And I thank you for your comments, and we appreciate it. So I'll tell you one thing. Up here, we don't get patted in the back every day. And I thank you for that, and that you recognize that. A lot of times we're told the big letters and this and the other, the big bad words, or we're judged harshly and stuff like that. And as a political figure, we take it because we have thick skin. But we thank you for your compliments and your acknowledgement and your recognition of what this governing body is doing and the things that we're changing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, Councillors' reports.
Thank you. Appreciate
Mr.
it.
Mayor, with your permission, maybe we excuse.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for attending. We'll see you tomorrow evening.
All right.
Councilors?
Mr. Mayor, I got 2 items on here.
Go ahead.
One of them is, Mr. Mayor and the city manager, I'd like to really thank you for organizing, and your staff, Mr. Steven Aragon, for organizing that welcoming to the governor for the Rodriguez Baseball Field Complex. It was great. It was a good turnout. I heard no complaints. Everybody was happy. I think we really hit it out of the ballpark on that day, and that's what counts. When we have good leadership, that's the outcome of things, of the events or happenings. Last week we had a couple of meetings on our budgets, and we spread out some monies, and hopefully the public will know how we spent that money down the road. We'll put it on the uptick and on a corner somewhere. But we tried hitting every areas of the community. We weren't selfish. Everybody shared the what we had, and we divided it pretty much equally. So those are good things that are happening. So I thank you again and you and your staff and all the city employees that participated and helped out. It was great being out there. The other item, Mr. Mayor, is I would like to ask that you replace 2 members at the Finance Committee. Ms. Councillor Elaine resigned due to her conflict with her work. And also, Mr. Mel Sweeney resigned, as I mentioned, about 2 months ago, that he had family medical issues and he can't serve. So we need
Okay.
two new members on there, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Rodriguez?
I have a couple of comments, but it has to do with small businesses, so I don't know if you want me to make the comments now or wait until we address number 2 on the agenda. And I'm fine either way.
Yeah, if you could reserve just till we get to
Okay,
that.
sounds
I'd
good.
appreciate it. Anybody else? Councilors' reports? I'd just like to say that I'll be attending an awards banquet tomorrow evening in Santa Fe. The Watershed Alliance and the Gainas Watershed Alliance and the Hermit Creek Waters Youth Association group is getting a big award in Santa Fe tomorrow night. It's a Pinon Award, and it recognizes organization and community involvement throughout the, with their project that they submitted in regards to the Riverwalk. So I'll be there in support of all the people who did the hard work. They will be receiving the award. I will just be there as part of moral support and encouragement for them to continue to do the wonderful work that they're doing. I met with several business people today regarding, we'll talk about item number 2 in a while. Lots of good concerns, lots of good conversation that we've had. It turns out, every conversation that I had turned out positive. I had with lots of good remarks and a lot of good feedback. Wednesday, we have a meeting with the new field representative for Teresa Ledger Fernandez, Ms. Jennifer Sanchez. I'll be meeting with her on Wednesday, and we will be talking about mostly federal funding for Las Vegas. And I will be meeting with, on Saturday, there is a unity parade, and the parade features all our schools and universities, and the grand marshal of the parade is going to be the United World College students. And I welcome everybody to the parade. It's going to be fantastic. It's the first big unity event that our town has seen, where all the schools are going to be involved. And again, we welcome the United World College students as the grand marshal for this parade. And then it culminates with the Matanza over at Melody Park with their new Matanza facility and entertainment and a big meal. Hats off to Dr. Eric Romero at New Mexico Highlands University and his team for arranging this community event. It should be fantastic. And the president of New Mexico Highlands University, Mr. Minner, wants to make sure that he knows, that everybody knows that it's a community event, and it's not just for New Mexico Highlands University, but he's inviting the entire community to the Matanza. Lastly, I'd like to say that the Board of Regents will be meeting tomorrow? Wait. Friday. And on their agenda is the vote to proceed with a partnership with the city and county regarding the golf course. So if anybody would like to attend that or send any public input to that meeting, they're welcome to do so. We will be there. We always have been at the table when it comes to negotiating the operation of the golf course. And we have always been at the table, and we will continue to be at the table until there is a positive resolve with that golf course. So that's my report.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mator?
I was going to wait till after the awards was presented, but I too would like to thank the Las Vegas Community Foundation, Mr. Almobaca, and all members for the invitation as to be a guest also at tomorrow's awards, Prestige Award, Pinyon Award for the Gallinas River Restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, Police Chief's report, and we have our Police Chief, Antonio Salazar.
Welcome, Antonio. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
So here I have the September monthly report. So in our Field Operations Division, which is patrol, from September 1st through September 30th, 1,460 calls for service, 15 burglary calls. 4 of those burglaries were reported, 160 traffic citations, 10 non-traffic citations, 0 parking citations, and 17 arrests were made. This is for our dispatch, the communication division. 1,409 calls for service, 58 were animal control calls, 81 were the fire department calls, and 238 were the medic calls.
I'm sorry, well, what?
Our ambulance calls, the AMR, our new ambulance.
238 calls for service?
238, whether they're all medical calls, ill subjects, just whatever medical calls they've generated through dispatch. From our records, our information division, 105 offense incident reports were entered, 35 traffic citations were entered, accident reports were entered, and 170 citations were entered. 164 customers were attended to, 328 offense incidents and traffic accident reports were scanned, 19 City of Las Vegas IPROs requests were completed, and also continuing to work on the destruction order for the 2004 through 2017 citations, and also 2005 through 2016 incident reports. Also, along with that destruction order, the miscellaneous documents. In our grants department, completed IPA requests, entered citations, and completed daily interviews, internal audits. Attended New Mexico Gang Task Force meeting. Completed and updated monthly missing offense reports and traffic accident reports. Working on the NIBR entries for the Department for Public Safety and FBI. Those are for our reports to get, it's very specific on what is sent over to the public safety, so we can get an idea on what crimes are happening or what issues are happening within the city of Las Vegas. Our street crimes investigations / narcotics and evidence sections. Our street crimes unit, 15 cases were assigned, 15 cases were self-initiated, 2 arrests were made, 1 missing person was found, 0 stolen vehicles recovered. We had 2 search warrants that were conducted. We had 13 cases closed within our investigation division. Evidence seized by agents, investigations, and our police officers. We had 1 gram of methamphetamine seized. We didn't have any cocaine any cocaine seized. 3 fentanyl pills. We had 0 firearms seized. 58 evidence cases. 196 evidence was turned in. 4 pieces of property were released. That could be some cases were closed, things like that. They were able to get the property back. 102 cases at New Mexico Department, our labs, where evidence was turned over to our labs. 1 case at the New Mexico RCFL. That's where the phones to get evidence from our phones. 1 firearm was seized from patrol. 14.8 grams of methamphetamine from patrol. 15 strips of Suboxone, that was also from our patrol. 14 IPA requests, that included DVR and DVDs. 1 gram of fentanyl was seized, and 11 grams of marijuana was also seized. So meetings and trainings attended by our street crimes and our evidence section to include our narcotics. They attended district court, magistrate court. They conducted safe house interviews. They attended MDT meetings.
MDT.
Mexico, sorry, the acronym, drawing a blank here.
Okay.
Yeah. And our street crimes responded to 81 calls for service during the month of September. The Animal Controls Division, so they have 51 calls for service, 8 citations were issued, 14 animals were impounded, 11 notices were given, and 7 complied with those notices. Court cases, we haven't had any resolved with fine. We had 1 resolved by dismissal or referral, and 0 resolved by no-show. And our training and recruiting, we had 1 police attended the response to resistance training in Hobbs. 1 attended the background investigations in Rio Rancho. 3 of our officers attended the first line supervisor training in Rio Rancho. I attended the police chiefs meeting for future police chiefs training in Rio Rancho. That was very informative, and I collected a lot of good information, and also I was able to outreach to a lot of other agencies and made those connections. There was firearms instructor that we held a training for Cimarron PD. They came down and we qualified, I believe, 2 other officers for firearms. Recruiting, we conducted oral interviews for our vacant lieutenant positions. We had conducted oral interviews for the police officer positions who applied. So out of those, we hired 6 police officers. 2 that have started with us now are Justin Padilla and Sam Peacock. They're currently employed as police officers right now, going through the first part of the training. Once the other group comes next week, that's whenever we'll start our in-service for, like I said, 6 new officers. We're planning on hiring 16 new employees throughout the department. That's to fill our records division, our dispatch, our admin aides, animal control, and our CSA positions. So if everything goes well, we'll have all those positions filled. We have our vacancies. We have 1 lieutenant, 2 sergeants vacant. We have 9 police officers, but I mean, that's to, if all of these go through, then we'll have 2 left, 2 officer positions left.
Fantastic. Good job.
So this will be in the next months, but just to kind of give you guys an update, we're 2 of those officers that are coming in now are going to be certified. So after those 2 officers come in within this month, we'll only have 1 more position to fill for police.
Wonderful. That's good news for the community.
And hopefully we can fill that one. So
Thank you for working so hard.
yes. So like I said, we'll have those 9 positions filled, or 8 of those filled. 1 community service aide, that's still vacant. Communications manager is vacant. 4 communications specialists. Our informational specialist, which is a records clerk. Our admin aide, 1 admin aide, and 2 animal control. And I also, I know the council requested for more specifics on the burglary. I don't necessarily want to give addresses out, but I can give at least the block numbers if you guys want to hear that. So we had 1 in the 1200 block of Salzbacher. that was reported. Another one that was reported in the 1100 block of Romero Street. The other reported was the 600 block of Legion, and the last one that was reported was the 900 block of Douglas. And if you guys need, I have the all of the burglary reports, and I can give.
That's sufficient.
Thank you, appreciate it. At this time, Mr. City Manager, I'd like to request a special meeting between you, me, and the police chief, and some of the people in the department that are working narcotics. I'd like for that meeting to happen next week. And the topic will be narcotic enforcement. And I will send the email out to anybody who wants to attend, but most importantly, seeing where we at and we don't lose track of that narcotics enforcement. Thank you. Anybody else, Mr.
Yeah,
Mr. Mo?
I just had a question. I guess we still have a couple of individuals that just don't get it. You know, we're trying to improve our city, and they're graffitiing our city. So, is there any way, like on Bridge Street area, if we can place a camera to catch these individuals? Or, because they're like hitting that area between the Gallinas River. I don't know if they're on bicycles or what, or on foot. But we just did some nice murals there, and, you know, they've already spray painted, they're already tagged it.
Yes.
And I was wondering if maybe foot patrol or stakeouts or cameras, something like that would see if we can catch these people.
So in response, we could do more foot patrol throughout the area. Now that we're actually getting a little bit more staffing, we could actually utilize those trikes that we purchased some time back, and also our bike patrol more on Riverwalk. We haven't really, now we have a little bit more of a chance because of our staffing. We're 5 to a crew, so that hasn't happened in a little while. So we could actually start implementing foot patrol, bike patrol, and utilize our trikes. And as far as the cameras, we are utilizing those cameras in our narcotics. So once those investigations come to close, or they've gathered some their information, we can start putting those cameras up in that area. I know that there's been several requests, so we've already kind of have that next in line to use for those cameras.
And the other thing is, do we still have the program for officers go by and check the businesses owners' doors?
Yes, yes. Our security checks, the officers are turning those in. They do five an officer.
Okay.
So they go by districts. They are turning those in still.
And maybe this question is for the city manager. Where is the ambulance service located at now?
They're in the old building on the corner of University and 8th Street, old optic building, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Do
That's
they
it.
have, I guess they don't need a sign, do they? Or do they?
Not necessarily, it's not a walk-in service
Okay.
provider, so.
Thank you. Yeah, people
We
ask
can-
me all the
we
time,
can
I
ask.
say, well, you know what, I know they moved, but I can't remember where. But yeah, so Las Vegas, they got the old Las Vegas, they got. Thank you.
I went walking late one evening, and if you haven't been on Bridge Street in the evening, now with this construction, it's a pretty scary place at night. And so I would like the officers to continue to monitor the safety of those businesses along the construction area. I was there the other night, like I said, and it's pretty spooky. With all, it just looks inviting for something to happen, and I'd like to make sure that the police are watching out for those businesses in that construction area.
Okay.
All businesses, but especially now with the streets being blocked and so forth.
Okay.
I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
And thank you for all your hard work, Antonio.
Thank you.
Commissioner,
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
a couple of things in your report, Chief. The hiring, I know there was some issues pertaining to HR, that's all been addressed?
Yes.
So we're,
They're already going through backgrounds. We're giving them an opportunity to to go through our backgrounds and see where they go. I mean, there's still a little bit of a process. Yeah, they're good to go, and, you know, they're going through our process.
Okay. The other thing, I guess this would be more of a comment. I know I sent you, the mayor, and also the council members, the proposed ordinance that I'm going to be requesting. It's the automated speed enforcement ordinance, where we'll look into getting those automated, it's going to help out with speed enforcement within the community. So just, if you could kind of review that. I know I spoke to Scott. Scott's going to kind of touch up and see what we need, I mean, this was proposed through Albuquerque. Albuquerque passed it and kind of, so it meets our needs. I'm waiting for information on how to RFP the services for this automated enforcement. And then also another thing, I'm not sure if you're aware, but on Thursday, November 19th, BFA is having a training, and I think it's important, I don't know if you're aware of it, but that'll address the Law Enforcement Protection Fund, what you can and cannot be used. I don't know, maybe you would have somebody from their staff.
Yes.
Okay. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Antonio. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you.
Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, we have our finance report, and we have our finance director, Jesus Vaquera.
Welcome, Mr. Vaquera.
Mayor, Council, the finance report is for the quarter ending September 30th. General fund revenues were at 24%, expenditures at 20% with a surplus of $79,427. Enterprise fund revenues at 21%, expenditures at 16% with a surplus of $647,734. The rec department had revenues at 13%, expenditures at 8% with a surplus of $62,972. Lodgers tax had revenues at 37%, expenditures at 13%, and a surplus of $111,607.
So on lodger's tax money, have all the expenditures been accounted for? Everything that, what I found out earlier this week was, I was concerned because I didn't have a spreadsheet to look at as to what has been applied for, what has been funded, and what has been used, and so forth. So I want to make sure that that balance reflects the current state of the budget and the current balance.
Okay. As of September 30th, everything is in there.
Okay.
There's some issues as far as encumbrances not getting paid yet because we haven't gotten them invoiced. But that's on the lodger's tax, and they need to turn in those invoices.
Encumbrances, do you know how much roughly those are? And why they haven't turned in those invoices?
No, sir.
Okay.
I would say anything 10 to 20,000.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, we had a discussion today with the lodger's tax chair to go over what the encumbrance report would look like for the lodger's tax. They did like the way it was laid out, so that they can have this report moving forward. And we'll get you this copy of this to each of the council and the mayor as well. I think what Mr. Jesus is referring to is that we have some projects that were funded under lodger's tax, but they have not asked for reimbursement yet.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I have a question. Go ahead.
Also, maybe in a near future meeting, I'd like to get a better understanding of lodger's tax in regards to what areas and what percentage can be spent in the different areas. Because often we'll talk about, well, can we spend that out of lodger's tax? And I get told, no, we can't. So I'd like to get a presentation so I get a better understanding of what lodger's tax is and where it can be spent, and if there's a percentage, like for instance, if so much can be spent on promotion, what percentage is that? And then how much have we spent year to date regarding that, so we don't overspend? And then also, I want to know, and I think that will come in the report that you're talking about, is, you know, what are we spending lodger's tax on, you know, a year to date?
So, Dr. Rodriguez, in part of my attempt for the second agenda item, I will explain to you what's happening, what started happening this week, and what's going to happen next week.
Okay.
Regarding lodger's tax. And it does include testimony from the mayor of Taos and the city manager of Santa Fe, along with the tourism director in Santa Fe. And those are some of the things that we absolutely will take up next week.
Okay.
Between Monday of this week and the Friday of next week is Lodgers Tax Week in Las Vegas, where we're going to discuss every single thing.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to talk about the board composure, we're going to talk about state statutes, we're going to talk about, I don't want to get into too much, processes, applications, everything, and the functioning of a board, and what money can be used for, with the intention of using every single penny that lodger's tax has in one way or the other. That money has to be expended, and we are going to find ways to spend that money. And so it's all lodger's tax in this next week. And the city manager has already had several meetings regarding this. And next week, what I want to do is culminate the week with a meeting where we invite the public to participate in some of this discussion, but absolutely, that you'll have plenty of opportunity, and we'll all be lodger's tax professionals by next Friday.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Romero.
Just real quick, Jesus, I know we had this discussion, but I think it's appropriate to say this right now. On those expenditures that you're kind of waiting on receipts, I know we had the discussion to ensure that they're valid invoices and not just created.
Yes, the city manager has rejected a few of those, and we're getting them resent and have a professional invoice redone.
I just wanted to make that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor. Maybe this question is for city manager. We passed that expending last week, 2 weeks ago, but the one-time raise for city employees, when was that going to happen after all? And was when we passed it the deadline for employees to be qualified for it? Because I assumed that was the deadline. Anyone hired after that day, after the day we approved it, will not be qualified. And I want to make sure that that reflects on the budget.
Yes, sir. Anybody that was employed as of the day that it was approved by the council would receive that one-time premium pay.
Okay, that's basically a clarification for all the department directors. And also that way you can adjust your financings accordingly.
Okay.
And the other question is I had on your second page of your finance report under the general fund. What's holding harmless the 250,000?
That is actually supposed to be the monies that we're getting from DFA for online sales. I need to change the whole hold harmless deal. That is, we're supposed to be getting monies from online sales now. In the past, the state would get it and just keep it. Now they're going to distribute it down to the counties.
counties and
And the
some
local.
municipalities. Yeah, okay. So where will that land up at?
Same place, it'll be in the general fund.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bacala.
Is there anything in your report that you need to make us aware of or a red flag anywhere? You'll always get that question from me.
No, sir.
Thank
We're
you,
good.
Mr. Vaqueta. Appreciate you being here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next order of business. Thank you, Mr. Vaqueta.
Mr. Mayor, moving on to business items. Item number 1, request to publish ordinance 21-18, an ordinance to create and amend various city ordinances regarding cannabis, business registration, zoning, nuisances, and water. We have our city attorney, Scott Aaron, presenting.
Thank you. And Mr. Aaron, if you'll just go through those significant parts of the ordinance that the questions were raised at our last meeting.
Glad to. We move to this front and center over here.
And welcome. Thank you for being here.
You bet. I'm pleased with the timeline of this ordinance. Figured it would take us a little longer, but we're moving right along, which is good because we need to move right along. Just based on the speed at which the state cannabis statutes are moving, and I know the county's already received an applicant. We've already received some information from a business that's looking at a particular property here in town, so it's moving, and I'm glad we're getting this done. Okay, if you go to page 4 of 20 on this ordinance, you'll see on paragraph 14 on that page 4 of 20, in red, I inserted some language here that gives the city the ability to terminate city-issued or city-provided licenses, registrations, approvals, utilities, and other such matters upon the second violation of this ordinance. And this ordinance specifically has to do with cannabis in residential structures. So that if we have major issues, the city's got some teeth to be able to go in there and address it. More so, I think that we're going to be using those in a commercial text. But if we go down to page, what starts at the bottom of page 6 of 20 is where I inserted the extraterritorial zone, the ETZ zone application. I was able to work with Ms. Amanda Salas from the county planning and zoning department, and her and I put together this section here. I tailored it a little bit for the city. The county's version is a little different because it's tailored for the county, but basically what we came to was this. In the ETZ zone, if there's a business who wants to set up shop in the ETZ zone and none of their utilities are provided by the city, the county takes the lead. They go through the county's application process, they deal with the county processes them. The only thing they would pay to us is a $150 application fee because the county will be corresponding with us and we'll kind of be working together, but the county will take the lead. However, if the city is providing city-provided utilities, then that entity will have to go through the city's application process and will have to pay a $150 fee to the county for kind of a cooperative processing of it. We'll have to be, obviously, working with the county. The county is expecting to be able to use our city fire department to do a fire inspection in the ETZ zone, and so the city will also be getting a fee for the fire inspection. The county at this point doesn't have their own fire marshal yet, so until that, if and when they get their own fire marshal, that might change. But in the meantime, for the ETZ zone, they would like to use our fire department, our fire marshal, to go out and do the inspections, and that would be an extra fee that the city would be obtaining on top of what other application fees that might exist. I'll just highlight the changes, and then you guys can feel free to kind of talk about them. On page 14 of 20, this is where the nuisance, the overhaul of the nuisance ordinance is. On page 14, about halfway down, 301-5, it talks about declaring a nuisance. And basically what we've got set up is that it would be unlawful to be in possession or to maintain a lot, a building, or a structure that's dangerous, unsafe, or not compliant with applicable codes if that non-compliance poses a credible danger or a credible fire hazard or otherwise creates a public nuisance. So what it's basically saying is, obviously there's homes in Las Vegas that have been here for 100+ years. A lot of those houses aren't going to be up to modern day electric codes, plumbing codes, right? Those type of heating codes. But in the event that one of those code violations was discovered, they may be grandfathered in, but if it poses a significant risk to the public, then the city could go in at that point and declare it a nuisance. And the reason why is because I'm specifically thinking of an example of, back in the old days before when people were putting wood-burning stoves in, where normally they had an old coal-burning fireplace, an old wood-burning fireplace, a lot of people just used a single-ply stovepipe. Nowadays, they're insulated. They're double or triple insulated pipes so that you don't get fires. A lot of homes here in town, and I lived in one for a while, had one of those single-sleeved stovepipes. In the event that something like that could be shown to cause a credible danger, let's say, for instance, they did have a little house fire, and it didn't burn down the house, but maybe just, a piece of the roof got on fire, and we went out there and hosed it down, and we put it out. The city can step in and say, now that's a nuisance because it's a known danger, and you need to get it fixed before it might potentially burn down your whole block. So if a code violation is discovered where there's a credible danger of fire hazard, then that would give the city the ability to go in and say, that's a nuisance and you need to get it fixed.
So then why would we have to grandfather in any resident or buildings if they have to comply to the current guidelines? There would be no reason to grandfather them in, correct?
Well, they already are grandfathered in. Because they were built 100 years ago, they were built to whatever codes were applicable then. But there's nothing that allows the city right now to go in and require every house or structure in the city to be brought up to modern day codes. In order to do that, it would be extremely expensive.
But if you're going to operate and grow marijuana, then I would think they would be required and not grandfathered in, correct?
Well, so let's take an example.
Because that's a risk, I would think.
Sure. Let's take an example.
You wouldn't be able to get house insurance, I wouldn't be, or building insurance.
Yeah. So what I'm imagining, just as an example, is somebody wants to put a little grow room in their basement with some lights and some plumbing and some ventilation fans for cooling or whatever. Right now, they could plug in those lights, and if they overload their system, then a circuit's gonna pop, and they're gonna be out. If that causes a house fire, then we're in a different situation. And underneath this nuisance statute, it's not under the cannabis statute, but under the nuisance statute, the city could go in and say, we have a credible danger of a fire hazard or something like that, and could say, you've got to bring that up to speed now, because now it's a nuisance. It's a known nuisance.
Right.
Some of these things might fly by for years without there being a nuisance. There might not be a danger. There may not be an electrical fire. So in those instances where there's not problems, there's not really enough of a governmental interest for the city to step in and require everybody across the board to bring all of their houses up to code. But in those instances where there is a credible danger and we know about it, the city could go in and declare that a nuisance.
Well, and I understand that. I mean, that'd be crazy to try to go into everybody's house and say, now you got to bring it up to code. But I would think that would be a viable option if I'm looking to apply or to grow marijuana and I need.
In a commercial setting, for sure. In a commercial setting, for sure.
Correct.
In commercial buildings.
So they shouldn't be grandfathered in.
Well, in the commercial setting, no, they wouldn't be. They'd have to, because they're going to have a fire inspection. They're going to have certain inspections. So in a commercial environment, if someone's growing commercially, which I don't expect that to happen in the city limits, because it's usually something that happens outside of the city in more of a rural area where they have some privacy and stuff. But should it happen in the city that somebody tries to grow commercially, yes, they would have to, whatever building they were in would have to be up to current standards. You are correct. And the same thing if you just scroll down one page to page 15, under G, this is what we talked about last week, which was the dangerous buildings. And basically what was in red here says that any building, property, or other structure that shall be considered dangerous and not habitable for purposes of this any building, property, or structure shall be considered dangerous and not habitable for purposes of this chapter if the building, property, or structure is not connected to, able to use services from, or does not have the infrastructure to provide the following utilities. So potable water from the city or functioning and producing well. So every property that someone's living in here in town has to either have city water or they have to have a functioning well. I mean, it doesn't matter to us which one they have, but they've got to have some type of potable water to the house. The other thing they have to have is electricity. The third thing they have to have is solid waste removal. We can't have people living in houses and they don't have trash pickup, because then you know what happens. They also have to have wastewater services from the city or a functioning septic system. And that provides for the fact that they have water coming in, and that has to be working, and they have to have wastewater going out, and that has to be functional, in addition to the electricity and the solid waste. Didn't include gas in there for obvious reasons. Some people may not need gas or want gas. They may heat their home with wood or whatever. So gas is not kind of one of those bare minimums. But water, electricity, trash removal, and wastewater are all required. And if they don't have it, then the building would be considered dangerous and not habitable, and they could cite them underneath this nuisance ordinance. And what that does, it keeps people from living in homes where they basically have no utilities, have no amenities, and they're just kind of squatting. Even if they own the property, they're just not squatting in terms of living there illegally, but squatting in terms of living there without any amenities. And our code enforcement keeps running into that, and that's why I want to include it in this ordinance here. The only other one I believe that was added was just a short couple of words on page 17. When the city does work on your house, if we go in and abate it, then we can declare a lien. But also if you're fined under this chapter, so there is the ability to fine someone, take them to court, have a court declare that they're in violation, and they can start accruing daily fines. Those fines can also be assessed in the form of a lien against people's property. And I believe that was the end of the changes that were made.
Mr. Romero?
Scott, I know we had discussed it was in here, but it's only under the residential area on page 2. Let me see. Page 3, sorry. On number 8, where it basically addresses the water, shall meet the requirements of the city water and wastewater regulations. So I don't see that in the commercial part. That's in the residential part of the ordinance, but not in the commercial.
But the reason why we have that, why we don't have it in the commercials, because there's a prohibition against any commercial cannabis facilities using city water for growing marijuana. So if a retail store that's just selling edibles and buds, so to speak, if they have a bathroom in the back of their shop, that's using city water. That's a different categorization. But anyone who wants to grow has to, at the state level, show that they have their own water rights and they have to disclose their water source. In a lot of municipalities, including ours, what it says in here is that they're prohibited from having a right to municipal water. And the reason why we're doing that is because Oregon and California and even Washington right now and other states that have legalized, they're having major water problems. As a matter of fact, it's moved to the point where people are stealing water for the big marijuana growing factories. So just by doing a across-the-board prohibition that anyone who wants to grow commercially can't use water. That's why the water's only addressed in the residential part.
So because I was under the impression that by state statute, we had to offer the availability, but we could put caps like on a certain amount of gallons. So that's not the case?
We don't have to, no, we don't have to offer municipal water to any industry that's coming in that's using excessive amounts, especially when the situation that we're in where we have water shortage. They don't have a right to municipal water.
And that's in state statute?
There's nothing in the state statute that gives them or allows them a right to municipal water. They've got to show that they've got their own private, either a well or water rights or some source of water, and they can't own municipal water. We own the municipal water, and then we charge people to use it on a per gallon basis, but they don't have a right to municipal water for commercial cannabis purposes.
Can we include that in the ordinance, or?
I think in one of the other portions of the ordinance where we dealt with, I think it was under one of the wastewater or wastewater ordinances,
Yeah.
there's a prohibition against using municipal water. I'd have to dig down and find it, but I know that it's in there.
I'll look for them if you guys have other questions.
It's on page 18, under 440-18. Talks about limitation of use. It says city municipal water and wastewater should not be used for the commercial cultivation, processing, manufacturing, or production of cannabis or cannabis products.
And there's not an avenue to where wastewater can be used for, I mean, as a...
No, and that's one of the other issues is when you're talking about growing cannabis, that's the most toxic part of it is their wastewater because of all the fertilizers and stuff that are used.
Well, not wastewater, effluent.
I think if you started putting those heavy chemical fertilizers into our effluent system, it's gonna cause problems for our wastewater department.
No, what I'm saying is the use, if somebody were to come in, they get I mean, there's not too many properties, but they could use the effluent water, where that's a revenue source for the city. For resale.
You mean the cannabis growers could use effluent water?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that they're allowed to use effluent water because the products that they're doing are used for human consumption, so they can't use that effluent water on items that are being grown for human consumption. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah, and Maria, our utilities director, had mentioned to us already that that wasn't going to be allowed because they would have to go through special permits, just like the discharging and watering the parks and that, through the state, so that's a long shot, very long shot.
So at any time, I guess, Scott, my next question, anytime something comes up, of course, we're setting this up, anything comes up, we can make amendments to this.
We can amend this however we want. These are our ordinances, and it's just like any other ordinance we have. Bring them before council, we can amend the ordinances. And I expect we'll do that. I fully expect that this will be a work in progress for a few years until we really get settled and we see what's going to happen. I think we'll be doing some amending.
Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance number 2118. And again, Mr. Attorney, if there's any changes, just bring them back to us and we'll amend this as accordingly in the near future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Upon a successful vote tonight, this will go out to publishing. It'll get published to the public. It'll come back to you for consideration to pass it. At that time, we may have some more comments from the public.
Very well. Thank you.
I'll second.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya, a second by Dr. Rodriguez. Roll call, please.
Counselor Olivari Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Rodriguez. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Next item is request approval to fund Las Vegas First Independence Business Alliance for marketing assistance from lodgers tax funding in the amount of $24,134. And we have presenter Mr. Elmo Baca.
Thank you. Prior to Mr. Baca speaking, thank you for your correspondence this afternoon. I read it prior to coming to the meeting, and I didn't have a chance to respond to you regarding your latest email. So, first of all, us putting a hold on this or tabling it till ASAP, this exact application, I'll tell you where things happened, how everything went down. One, after viewing the last largest tax meeting, I was quite disappointed in the way the meeting was conducted, okay? For several reasons. Raised a lot of red flags on my behalf. Second, almost the next day, I get a call that they wanted to put this on the agenda as an emergency item for consideration, although lodgers tax had been skipped. The process for lodgers tax approval had been skipped. And so that was another red flag. The second issue was when we started looking at the application, there were several questions on the details that were listed on this. Nothing to do with the organizations, and I know several organizations worked hard to put this together. And I wish that, and I am by no way saying that it is not an emergency, okay? Because I know already that we're already approaching the shopping season, and in the meantime, we are looking at creating our own campaign from the city of Las Vegas, encouraging people to shop locally. Those ads will be on the radio and on the newspaper as early as the first week in November to kick off this advertising campaign that focuses on local dollars, local economy, local shops, shop local, shop downtown, shop the uniqueness of our shops, right, yada, yada, yada. In the meantime, now, not to sound so dramatic, but we blew up the whole largest tax system, and everyone started asking questions. How did things go to largest tax? How are they approved? Who gives the authority? Why is there a limit on such a thing? Why? How much of an X% can we use for marketing? What is marketing? What is tourism? I mean, all these questions started surfacing. So I called a meeting for Tuesday, this last Tuesday, and I noticed that during this discussion that there were some issues within the organization, within the city of Las Vegas, that we need to fix. Not at the sake of your application. This is the sake of the entire process for lodgers tax. And so once we had a meeting on Tuesday, and we started discussing all this, we have decided since to get, Councilman Romero has already been in contact, and I know there's handbooks out there. I have a handbook on lodgers tax, and I've read the handbook on lodgers tax. The issue here is that not everyone is following the handbook per rule. The other issue is Mr. Romero made contact with Department of Finance and Administration for advice. We have a meeting that's going to take place with DFA. We have a meeting taking place next week with the mayor of Taos, with the city manager of Santa Fe and the tourism director of Santa Fe, all regarding the use of lodgers tax. So we can get together and make sure that we have a robust process and that every cent in lodgers tax is used. So I want that money to be able to be used for projects like knocking down an abandoned gas station and putting up parking in a public restroom facility. That's an example. And so that we, as an organization, can define what marketing is, who's the target of the marketing, all that stuff. Now, I know we don't have time to, to waste or to spend a lot of time on this because I realize the urgency of having a business on Bridge Street and with the construction and so forth that's going on. I totally understand that. We all understand that. There are some definite housekeeping procedures, and including the function of the board, the lodgers tax board, that we need to address immediately in order for all these changes to happen efficiently. Not sacrificing, again, your application process. I'm sorry that your application came up at the same time that all these other issues came up. But it's in the long run, and I don't want to say long run, in the short run, between, and I told Leo, our number one priority for this week is to blow up the entire lodgers tax system and to make it more user-friendly. And I'm talking applications, I'm talking definitions for marketing, I'm talking definitions for tourism, I'm talking definitions for beautification, all those things that us as an organization do not have. More details, not to make it so cumbersome for somebody to want to apply for lodgers tax, but the application, the current application right now does not lend enough information to decision makers regarding these projects. I'll give you an example. So when you say we're going to use $25,000 for Facebook, I thought, $25,000 for Facebook. Okay. So in that, it didn't say how that $25,000 for Facebook would be used. It just said, Facebook, $25,000. And I'm like, okay, does advertisement on Facebook cost $25,000? Are they going to pay someone to put it on Facebook? Where is that 25? And this is just an example of going, when I started going line item on your presentation, on your package. And so I think it was, and I may be wrong, it may not be 25, but it was 20-something.
No, 2,600.
Okay, sorry, 2,600. So I still don't know what that means. Is that the cost to pay someone to create these ads? Is it what Facebook charges to create these ads? Is it, design of an ad? So in my defense, when you see a line item that says $2,600 Facebook, it didn't describe in that process how that money would be. I'm just using that as an example. And so I didn't want to be disrespectful and say, nope, we're taking this off the agenda, see you tomorrow, see you later. I want to expeditiously put this on a timetable, and we have a special meeting on November 3rd for other reasons, and I want to put that on the agenda for November 3rd. That would give us some breathing room, and hopefully so that we can get this project funded some way or the other with all the questions that we have, okay? So with all those, with your application and the packet that you sent, I'd like for this, and even to this point, we are even considering the function of lodgers tax board, period. who they are, what they do, how fast they do it, what reports they give us, etc. The other thing I didn't necessarily agree with, which I think is totally the lodger's responsibility, is when it says, how will you account for heads and beds? And your packet says the city will do that. Well, it's really not up to the city to do that. It's really up to lodgers for them to tell us, we had 72 visitors for the Shop Las Vegas thing, or the car show, or whatever will be funded. We don't have that mechanism in place. We collect checks from lodgers every month. We have been doing this on an honor system. There's no audit for us to go out there and to sit down at Best Western with their bookkeeper and saying, you sent us a check for $110 last month. Now we want to know if that amount is true. So selecting and being a good steward of this type of process, we also want to install, and not before your application is approved, but we need to, as an organization, make sure that we have all those checks and balances in places. Is it your fault that we don't have that? I'm sorry, it is not your fault. It's our fault. And that's why I've given straight direction to the city manager and to council that by next Friday, we will know everything about lodger's tax, and that we will want to be, and this is all from listening to the business community say, we want to use that money. Let us use that money. We are all in agreement that that money should be spent, and that every single cent in that lodger's tax kitty, that $100 and whatever $1,000, that it's spent. I don't want any money left behind. I want to fund these projects. I want to make sure that these are funded. So I hope you understand, and I know it's disappointing to a few of you, especially when you have a door open and you have a business open, during this time of construction, and that is the most critical time for us, is that we realize that all this construction has impacted the operations of businesses on Bridge Street and Plaza. I'd be stupid if I didn't know that. And so what we want to do right now is we want to solve this issue as promptly as possible. Leo has already met, our city manager has already met with Mr. Vakta this afternoon regarding lodger's tax and asking some questions and having emergency meetings set up for next week and improving this whole process. We want to help you. There's no doubt that this is going to happen. I'm sorry that it opened a bunch of questions and it opened a Pandora's box of questions and issues that belong to you and that belong to us and to the Lodgers Tax Board. In short, I want to make sure that you understand that the council is concerned, and we already talked about increasing the membership of Lodgers Tax to include more at-large members in the community. To increase it to two more people on that at-large members on that Lodgers Tax. Comply with the rules that are set, that we will continue to do, that there'll be 2 people from hotel and motel, or 3, 2 people from entertainment, or whatever that is, regarding restaurant or whatever, and then we really want to include more members at large. I think now there's only room for 1. We'd like to include that, so that the process is fair. But with that, I hope you understand our rationale. And this came to us really fast. It was last Friday when we were working on a deadline to publish our agenda. We have to have the agenda into the optic by 10 o'clock.
By the morning and then to the council by the afternoon.
Yeah, so we have to have it printable ready. This was sent to me Friday morning at 9. And so I said, just to help with the process, I said, let's include it on the agenda, because I know how important it is to the business community. That's why I included it on this agenda. I'm sorry that this blew up. I'm sorry that I saw that last larger tax meeting, and I'm sorry that we started questioning all these processes at this time. We don't want to prolong this. We want to make things happen, and we do want to make sure that we do have a good marketing plan for the holiday season. And we're going to work expeditiously to get there together. Mr. Baca.
Can I respond to your comments, please?
Yes, you may.
Good evening, Mayor Trujillo, City Councilors,
Welcome, Mr. Baca.
City Manager Maestas. I'd just like to give a little bit of context to our application. It might appear that it was a last minute, get it into this meeting kind of thing, but I can assure you that it was the product of several weeks of work. We started working on this the Friday after Labor Day, and a group of merchants met every Friday for the last 7 weeks. We're all busy, we're volunteers, so in fact, we didn't have it ready for the last lodger's tax meeting. We were still getting quotes on ads in different regional markets. So it was not our intention to bypass the system. I can tell you that as we were preparing this application, we did invite input from the city staff. Bill Hendrickson, when he was still the Community Development Director, and Virginia Marujo came to a meeting, I believe, the third Friday in September. And, they advised us that if we were not able to meet the schedule for lodger's tax, we could always appeal directly to the city council, which is what we ended up doing. Monday, the city manager met with a few of us, and we were able to exchange some ideas with the city manager. I think he gave us some good suggestions on our application going forward. So it wasn't like we were trying to get around anything. We were trying to follow the rules as we understood them. I'm a bit concerned when you suggest that the lodger's tax system, the process, is going to be blown up, start all over. That makes me personally a bit nervous, because I'm not sure when our application's going to be heard. And I can assure you that we do feel it's an emergency. We would like to bring Old Town Commercial District back by Christmas with some real strength. We want to try to jumpstart our tourism marketing. We're hurting. We all know that. And so every day that goes by, it's difficult for us. So I think we would appreciate some guidance from the city council and the city staff on how we can work creatively together with you and the staff to try to get some effective marketing going.
I agree.
So that's my question to you,
Okay.
Mayor and city councilors. How can we work together in the very short term, like starting tomorrow, to try to get some effective marketing going outside of our town,
Right.
so that we can draw tourists back in and help the local merchants, not just Old Town, but the whole community,
Right.
I think could really use a boost.
Well, first of all, Mr. Baca, this is an emergency for us too.
Okay?
I don't want you to think that this is not an emergency. You may feel that because you're a business owner with a door open. It is an emergency for us, and that's why we're acting expeditiously on this.
Okay.
And that's why I said I wanted this done as soon as possible. And I wanted the application to be reviewed as soon as possible. That's why I wanted it tabled to the next meeting. That might give lodger's tax an opportunity for them to have an emergency meeting and to do what they need to do. The only time something can come to council is when Lodgers Tax has given a recommendation and you don't agree with it. You can appeal to council. That's not what happened here with this process. So for you to know from us that this is an emergency as well, I don't want you to feel like we're kicking it aside and that it's not a priority. We will, and if you want to meet tomorrow on this, let's do this. And if we have to, just in order to get this process complete as fast as we can, we'll do that.
Okay,
And I guarantee you that.
okay, part of our concern is in order to engage the holiday markets, as you all
I
well
realize
know,
this.
people start traveling Thanksgiving weekend. It's 4 weeks from today. So, we want to start getting our ads placed. Really, people start thinking about Thanksgiving right after Halloween. They start making their plans. That's 10 days from now. So that's why we're concerned. I accept, I'm glad you say you're willing to work with us tomorrow. I hope that assistance includes some kind of financial support for our advertising campaign. Does it?
Once again, I think that gives us time to look it over and to consider it. Absolutely. That is in the consideration. That's what this whole issue is about, is the consideration of funding. That's what this whole issue is to hear tonight, is the consideration of city money, Lodgers Tax money, to include this, to move forward. We have already committed to doing a radio, and I know it's not the grand market that you guys have mentioned on those 12 entities that you are wanting to advertise with, New Mexican, radio stations and all those. I read each one. It includes a local campaign for now. Those ads are going to start the first week of November. As soon as we can get this done, Elmo, we will. And I'll entertain ideas on your behalf, on the behalf of the Lodgers Market, the Lodgers Tax Board, as to how we move this forward efficiently. But there were some questions on your application that raised some red flags.
Okay, I think we can defend all of our budget figures if given the opportunity.
Mr. Amir?
So I just kind of, there were a couple of, not big things, but, I'll read the statute. It says, basically, municipality or county to provide easy access for tourists or visit tourist-related facilities, attractions, and events. So one of the items that I saw, and I don't know how you would do this, but how would the cash mob promotion event bring heads and beds?
Well, it's a broadcast on Facebook, so anybody with a Facebook account can see it. It actually, we've had shoppers from other places buy stuff on these cash mobs.
No, but how would it bring, again, we go back to the statute of bringing people to stay in our community. So how does that, how are we going to tie that to bringing people here to stay in our hotels?
I would just say we're reaching customers in some remote places that might come and visit our town. Is there an exact measure of that? I don't think so, but...
So those are kind of some of the questions that we have as far as validating that we're following ordinance and those specific items that we're funding, are actually bringing heads and beds. And I'm sure the Lodgers Tax has those same concerns. So, because you have these events that you have listed in your event here. So having that cash mob, how do we tie those into these events, the cash mob?
It's just one of several. It's just one of, we put together a schedule of 10 events. They're not all cash mobs. Some of them involve different types of activities. I think the cash mob is designed to help local businesses.
And I guess this kind of goes back into the tying with lodgers, the proper use of lodger's tax. I mean, I understand where you're, I mean, I totally support cash mob, I understand all that, but I'm just kind of saying, some of the questions that we have with DFA are what specific, I mean, we could ask that specific question with them. You know,
Sure.
can this be used? And if they say no, all we're trying to do is make sure that we're spending this properly. And I'm going to tell you right now that I know in the past we haven't. You know, I'll be straight up honest, right now, we haven't spent it properly. Accountability has not been there. You know, and all we're just trying to do is trying to make sure that we're doing it right, so that way, whatever entity comes up with these funds, you know, you guys are spending it right, we're making sure that we're doing our part, and that's all this is again. You know, it's not nothing towards, you know, the mayor has and city manager have already started working on a marketing plan. We totally get, you know, the need for this marketing. It's just, on these proposals, we want to make sure that, as the mayor mentioned, that everything ties into it, we're doing everything properly. Yes, there's best practices, we understand that part, but again, those best practices, I mean, some of this stuff, in my opinion right now, of course, we're going to meet with DFA, as the mayor mentioned, and we're going to meet with Santa Fe and all these other, you know, entities to make sure that if I'm wrong, then I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong in this. But I think we're at a point to where we need to make sure that we're doing this right. I'll be honest right now we've had a call into the auditor's office that they're looking into some of this. Right now, what we have to do is just make sure that we're on the right page and we don't get in trouble, because, you know, the last thing that we need is for our community to be on the newspaper, on the news for misspending any money at all. We've had that before, and we don't want to get there. And, you know, like the mayor mentioned, you know, we're with you, whatever we can do, you know, as the city. Meanwhile, in my conversations with the mayor, I said I think we can get all this done within a couple of weeks. You know, that makes sure that, you know, it gives, once we get all the guidance from DFA, from all these other entities that have been doing it, I mean, this is what the issue where we're at, is we've had a lot of turnaround. For instance, I know, you know, our finance person and our deputy finance person, the deputy that, you know, he's been here quite some time, but was never afforded the opportunity to, you know how, you know, lodger's tax and all that was. So he came in, and then we had, you know, our finance director. He knows that government and lodger's tax, what you can and cannot spend, you know, there's changes. And we're at the point to, I mean, I asked a couple of questions on some of the things that we have, as a council, approved that haven't been taken out of the lodger's tax. So this whole, you know, notion that there's so much money in lodger's tax, honestly, I don't have a true accountability until we get those numbers, you know, where we're at. You know, we could go and say we're going to spend this and let's spend this tomorrow, but if we overspend and not you spend properly, then who does that fall upon if not mayor and council? You know what I mean?
And just let me add this. It doesn't mean that we're putting everything on hold for 2 weeks.
No.
We're going to meet with you tomorrow, if you want, about this, on moving this application forward and seeing how we could do these and answering some of the questions that we have on that packet. That means, when he says 2 weeks, that means internally that we will have possibly a new board, that we will have a better application process, better accounting, better auditing process for lodgers, to make sure that we're getting the money that's owed to the city, and for lodgers tax board to go back and create a simple 2 or 3 questionnaire for every single front desk at every hotel and motel. What brings you to Las Vegas, the shop Las Vegas or whatever. How are we keeping track of how many beds are we putting in, how many heads are we putting in beds? Your application said that the city will do that. I'm putting it back on the lodgers. The lodgers board should have already come up with a process to figure out how many beds, how many heads are in beds for each event that we fund. So there's all those things. That's the 2 weeks we're talking about. Your application, we're going to meet with you tomorrow if you want to meet. We're going to make sure that everything is done, and we're going to move your application as quickly as possible.
Mayor Trujillo, Councilor Romero. Under no circumstances were we putting in items here to misappropriate lodgers tax funds. That's, that's not our intent. Maybe the cash mob activity is a little gray area. That's not our intent. Our intent in submitting this application to you was to create something wonderful for our town. A traditional small-town Christmas is what we want to create here. And we think that has great appeal to
It does.
people outside of our community. So that's what we want to accomplish with your assistance. So, we appreciate your comments and your willingness to work with us. We'll be happy to meet with you tomorrow. We do have quite a few merchants that have been working on this. I'm sure they'll be happy to meet with you.
Yes, I talked to several today, over the phone and in person, regarding this, and they're happy that we're looking at the whole lodgers tax process, period, for other reasons. They're actually ecstatic about it, and of course they're concerned also that we need to get this campaign going to fortify the economy for the holiday season. Absolutely.
Great.
Mr. Romero?
So again, I don't mean to offend you guys or anything. This is what I don't want to happen. An audit happens, you guys spent the money, we spent the money, and then they said, well, you know what, this organization needs to pay back. An audit comes back, and I know this happened before with some billboards where, Las Vegas First had to basically, take on that, that fee. I don't want that to happen. If there's creative ways that, like I said, if it creates the heads and beds, then.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? What exactly are you talking about with the billboard site? Can you clarify what was said there? I think it's really important to get set straight, because I think there's a misunderstanding happening here.
You can elaborate.
Okay. So, and this is what I was told. You had a member, used to, I don't know if I should say the name, or I'll say the name, Rich Slick, I guess, that had made some agreements with some billboards, is to my understanding.
That is correct, yes.
So, does that ring a bell? Or, I know that after a situation happened, he's no longer on Las Vegas First,
Partially, but there's many. What's the problem?
The problem was that it came to us with very little detail. And we had questions to ask. So we delayed the decision on the billboards till we had enough information in front of us. And then we approved it. But, and again, that may not be any problem of yours. It's our problem that our application for lodgers tax isn't up to par and isn't explicit enough so that some of these questions can be eliminated when they come to us. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want to take the floor from Mr. Romero, but that's what happened with the billboards, was the information that they presented to us first, we had tons of questions. And until those questions were asked, we weren't able to go ahead and move forward with those billboards.
May I speak again?
Briefly, yes.
I'm sorry, I know this is not.
Yeah, go ahead.
But those were two completely different issues. The billboards you're talking about was not about what Mr. Slick set up. What you guys approved is a completely different billboard situation. I really need to clarify.
We're using this as an example
Yeah.
of any application that comes to us and asking them to fund us. That's the common thing here.
Yeah.
We realize that it's different, that the billboards are passed, that's a past decision. We were using it in context.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And you have every right to ask every question for clarification. I
Right.
just don't want to have a false picture painted about something that was two different issues.
no, and we resolved it, obviously, because we
Okay.
approved the funding for the billboards. But that's exactly our situation is when these applications that come to us need to be better explained. That's the issue. Is that you can't just, somebody can't just write a number and say, this is for this is for that. Or advertisement. If you don't say Albuquerque Journal is gonna cost us $2,500, KOB-FM is gonna cost us, $60,000. If you just said advertising and gave us a number, that's an issue without breaking it down. That's all I'm saying. Mr. Romero?
No, again, I think, assure you that we're on your side. We don't want any business to fail. A few of us here have business owners, family businesses. There's nothing here against, we're anti-business, has been said in the past in other meetings, and let's clear that up, is that we support small business. If it wouldn't be for small businesses, community would not be surviving. We can't depend on Walmart, we can't depend, on these box stores. So, just for clarification, we're with you. Within general fund, there's a lot more open spending. There's not so many restrictions. So with that, we've committed, to let's get something in the meantime until we fix all this that we have to do. We don't want, and I don't mean to say this way, but, we can't be just spending this because we need, because it's the emergency. You know what I mean? We want to make sure that we're spending it, but not spending it right, not just kind of spending it because the money's out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Councilor Romero, if I could respond. We certainly appreciate your support, and what I'm hearing is willingness to work with us going forward. I think one concern we have is that we do not get cut out of the marketing process.
Oh, no.
So, we want to have some input into the message, a traditional small-town Christmas. We want to be part of the creative marketing going forward.
And we understand, what's happened in the past is we as the city have failed to do the marketing for our community. So we understand that you guys have stepped up and done what you can. The money's there and we're not spending it, so somebody has to jump in. And we understand that part. So within all this conversation, everything that we're doing, there's discussion that, hey, we need to step up a little more. The city of Las Vegas needs to step up, and we can't, wait for you guys to say, hey, red flag, we need something going on, and then we get to this point. We understand that part. We'll just move forward. That's all we could do is move forward. And
I think that's really positive, Councilor Romero. We'd like to.
And you'll be part of this. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to have a big meeting 2 Saturdays ago, and I didn't realize it was a holiday, when I called all the organizations together to talk about marketing. Who's doing what are we going to do, and how we're going to do this to start creating the platform of a marketing strategy. And so that meeting was canceled because of lack of interest from people who could not attend because it was a holiday, understandably. But you won't be left out of the future of marketing. Dr. Rodriguez?
I just wanted to make a couple of comments because your frustration is my frustration. I get frustrated also. And I've worked in government for 20 plus years, and it's always a process, and it's slow, and it's cumbersome. And I want you to know, as many people who called me regarding this application, I had the same number of people who called me and said they violated the process to put it on the agenda. Because I get calls and people will ask me, when do I have to have the paperwork to go on the agenda? And I call the city and I'm told, well, you gotta have it Thursday evening so we can process it by Friday. So the fact that it came in Friday at 9 is already making me look like I've told other residents a different process. So that's a concern. That's why we have a process in place, is so that everybody's treated fairly. The other thing is you were given misinformation, and I'm going to call it out on people, by the community director and by Virginia. There is no fast track to appeal to the city council. That's why we have committees. And people on the committees call me and say, well, how come that application didn't come to planning and zoning before it went to the city council? Why didn't that application come to the lodgers committee? You know, so we get those same calls on the opposing end because there's a process, and that's why we have a process, so everybody's treated fairly. I also, and I don't know if you've listened to any of our previous city council, my concern is very much for small businesses and the fact that we don't have money for small businesses. We have money for corporations. I mean, they have all kinds of money, and they can weather a COVID. They can weather construction. But our small businesses can't. And that's one of my largest concerns is, so why don't we have money that's set aside for small businesses where those business owners don't have, they don't come. You know, I'm a small business, my family is. We don't come from a lot of money. You know, and I'm very concerned about that because people that have kind of rode the COVID, and now the construction, I mean, that's very resilient. But we as a city should be able to assist you in that. And it could be through grants. Why aren't we applying for grants for small businesses? Other cities that I've lived in and worked in, they have a city chamber of commerce that does this for them, that does advertise. We have university here that has a large marketing. And do we use that resource? No. You know, why aren't we using those resources? I find it frustrating because we have everything in place. We just don't utilize it correctly. And that's what we got to work towards. But, Sir, I understand your concern, but as many calls as I received regarding this application and approving, I got the same number that said, well, they didn't follow the process to get put on the agenda. They didn't follow and go through the Lodgers Committee. So I want you to understand that we get the same number. And I have to tell them, well, that's why we have a process. People have to follow the process. Now, the fact that you get misinformation, and that's a problem, you know, and that's something that the city manager should be taking care of in regards to these different directors. They should not be telling you those things that you can appeal directly to the city council. No, that's not part of the process. That's all I want to say.
Just one quick question for the record, Mr. Baca. Was this in a lodgers tax meeting that you were told this, or how communication were you told by the director and or the city employees that you could like that?
We had a merchants meeting, and we invited Mr. Hendrickson and Ms. Marujo to present to us. I can tell you there were at least 20 merchants in the room. So, you know, I suppose there's some misunderstanding of the process, maybe from our point of view, but I don't think it was intentional. We actually contacted the appropriate city staff to give us advice.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, I realized that it was an emergency, and I wanted to entertain this item on the agenda, and that's why I moved forward to including it when everything started happening. But that's why I put it on the agenda, when actually the only appeals after the lodgers tax says, no, we're not going to fund this, that's when you have the option of coming to city council. But hindsight and everything, we're going to work together. You and I are going to meet. Mr. Bacta's going to meet. Mr. Maestas, we're all going to meet and get this flushed out as soon as possible. It's not going to take a long time.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make one more comment.
Go ahead.
Just one comment. I know with the whole Main Street thing, You know, it seemed like it was a negative thing. At the end of the day, we did, because of the questions and everything came up, we got an extra $300 and some thousand in funding. And I will say this, in reviewing all this stuff with lodger's tax, one thing that we're not doing is collecting from RV parks. You know, so I'm gonna let you all know, there's gonna be, you know, once we get these, I mean, this one's gonna take longer, I mean, but the long run is, we opened our eyes now we could start, you know, going to the RV parks and collecting from them. So I know it's frustrating, it's, you know, you guys feel like, hey, the council's totally, we're not against you guys, you know, there's this, let's fix this, do it right. In the meantime, we're gonna work with you to get some of this stuff going so you guys don't, you know, all businesses don't lose out. But at the same time, we're gonna fix it. You know, I think in speaking with Mr. Bakta, you know, he feels that, you know, the system's broken, we feel the system, now let's fix it. And I think at the end of the day, we're gonna see more revenue coming in through lodger's tax, which is gonna be beneficial to everybody, you know, and that's, that's the positive that I see coming out of this. And, you know, in the meantime, let's move forward and we support you guys. I mean, that's all I can say right now. We can't, you know, we need to see where we're at and do some house cleaning as the mayor mentioned. But
Mr. Montoya?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think you pretty much described it pretty good. Thank you. Hit the nail on the head. No, this is something that has been a little bit of a boiling pot for a while, because this governing body is maybe a little bit more stricter of how fundings are being spent and accountability of every organization that gets money from city lodger's tax or the city in general. You know, I do want to mention that we did, you know, give out $326,000 just 3-4 months ago to all the small businesses in Las Vegas. And some of them got 10,000 and some 8,000, some 500. So we try and help out everybody. And I think the last $40,000, there were no applicants, and our staff went out there and made sure that every business was contacted and given the opportunity to apply for that funding. So we did help out there. I too am in agreement with the mayor, is that we are instructing our city manager to do a citywide Christmas promotion for Las Vegas. And again, we want you to be included in that. And then the mayor also now, we're going to be getting a half page on the Las Vegas Daily Update. Again, I ask for you guys to come with us and promote your businesses in the Old Town area in those ads that we're going to have. The other thing is, you know, there's always something good that comes out of everything. And I think things are going to come out good, like Councilman Romero said on this one. I think the system has been broken for a while, and lodger's tax, I've attended their meetings on virtual, and I see the frustrations and the issues that they have, and I don't think they've gotten the support in the past from staff that they should be receiving. I was at that meeting when staff asked you to go before lodger's tax for this funding. It wasn't very clear, and it wasn't very supportive, and my apologies for that. We've got to work on that. The other thing is, the breakdown, and this is our fault, this falls on us, and we're going to work on this. The breakdown also falls in between the lodger's tax and our economic development section, and that might be reconvened, and we might just go straight to the finance department from now on, to have more accountability and have all the receipts and everything else, what is spent like, and all the accountability through them, so we can have a more accurate budget. Because I've heard this lodger's tax from $500,000 to $300,000 to 200 and some thousand. Now it's
74.
How much?
174,000. I agree with you.
So there's a lot of confusion, and we can't deal with that. We want to deal with accuracy, with accountability. Now, we don't want a check and balance, and we're going to hold everybody accountable. And we've already said that a few times already. We're going to have everyone be accountable. Whenever we go a check, we want to know what happened to that money, and vice versa, and we come back and report to us. So don't get disappointed. We're in favor of helping And we're gonna fix all those bugs, all the processes. I mean, I don't wanna land up behind bars. I mean, I wanna make sure that we spend this money accordingly and legally. I mean, I don't wanna be like other administrations, getting accused of misspending fundings. We have needs also, Mayor and Council has needs for lodger's tax, and we'll be approaching that also. But that application, I know they've worked hard on trying to accommodate it and trying to fix it, but it still needs work on it. And we need to define it more clearly in order to move forward. And like Councilman said, from now on, I think we're gonna hit, we already hit with our city attorney, we already hit the R&B, what do they call those apartments? Airbnbs, they're gonna be paying more lodge tax now. They hadn't been paying. Now, like he said, the RV parks and so forth. So more money will be generated so that we can do a lot more. But the process needs to be clarified for everybody. And the mayor said he's gonna invite everybody that wants to be involved in there. Every committee, anybody that uses lodger's tax, they can come to that meeting and give their input and how that we can help them out and what needs to be on that application. More simply for you to write in and more simply for them to understand. So that way we don't have no problems and it comes to us and boom, we decide if we want to proceed or not.
And most importantly, the whole process is so that we make sure that we use every cent of lodger's tax. And we get out of these limits and we get out of these 2-year things and we get out of it can only be used for this, that we open up the box, that we get creative and we spend every single bit of that money. It should never revert back to general fund. It should be spent as it should be. But we'll set up a meeting. I'll have our secretary call you tomorrow. And I got your phone number after finding a few people. I chased you down, I have your phone number. I will call you and we will meet and we will flush this out.
Thank you. We appreciate your time and comments in support of our Old Town business community.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely, thank you. Thank you very much. And you're always welcome at the city council meetings. Thank you, Meredith.
Mr. Mayor, I want to ask a couple of lodger's tax to Ms. Incomes.
I didn't even tell him.
This is an agenda item, so we have to.
Go ahead.
table it, right?
Next order of business?
Mr. Mayor, what are we going to do with this?
Oh,
item? Are
I'm
we
sorry.
gonna-
I'll entertain a motion to table this application process to our next meeting, which is November 3rd.
Special meeting.
Special meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that we shouldn't be influencing the voters, but I would like to go ahead and make a request to table this Las Vegas First Independence Business Alliance for the next meeting on November the 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second, by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari Jr.?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, a second by Councilor Olivari Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you so much. Next order of business, please.
Order of business discussion and decision on charter amendments. We have our city attorney, Scott Aaron.
David.
Thank you, Scott. To kind of move things along here, if we could, our council feels, but you guys have suggestions? I know, we got the recommendations from the Charter Commission, and I don't know how you guys would like to proceed. There are some of these items that I agree should be included in the proposed charter amendments. I don't know if you guys had any. The only one that me personally I don't agree with is changing to 8.
Which one?
The
Amendment number 1, increasing the number of city councilors to 8. Is there any support for that one?
Me too, I don't support that.
And I don't know how you guys feel, I do believe in an increase. I know it takes us into a position that 8 is too many, in my opinion, for a community our size. I'm in the agreement of 5, but it puts us in the position that right now we're in redistricting. If we were to change it right now, we would pay for redistricting, and then based if it does get approved, then have to redo that again, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, it's $20,000, or right about $20,000?
That is correct. 20,000 plus.
So, it's unfortunate, the timing of this.
Can you explain that a little more thoroughly for the public can understand?
We're still on the 84, or?
Yeah. Well, I'm just kind of giving my ideas on that one item as we're going through this. Is 8, I think, is too many. I'm in agreement of, maybe the 5. 5 is kind of where I would think would be a fair number. But we fall into the position to where right now we're redistricting. So, the direction as we stand is only 4 districts. So this we have to be, has to be approved by December. Am I correct, or November?
November.
So November, by December, they do the...
They already have the redistricting
Yeah.
completed.
So if we were to do 5, election comes in March, they say, yes, we want the 5, then we would have to redistrict after that. So just because of the timeline, I would probably, state 4 for now, and I guess, the next council can kind of decide.
Or if you don't mind me, sorry.
No.
I also thought about the 5, but because of redistricting and all the deadlines that we have, we would go for 4 and include that to say that during the next redistricting, which is in
Every 10 years.
every 10 years, but we're behind, right?
Yes.
Well, the census was behind, so therefore we had to do the redistricting
Okay.
within a
So-
month's time.
Okay, so then maybe we would say that at the time, if it passes by the voters to increase it by 5, we would redistrict at that time?
We can.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If it passes, the voters pass to increase it by 1, at that point, we would have to redistrict. And then it wouldn't be in effect until the redistricting, until the next election.
Correct, but we would have to pay for another redistricting.
Yes. Yes.
With that, I think it probably, because we have to, by that time, we'd have to have the charter change it again anyway.
Yep.
So,
Right.
it really let them determine. I just think it's unfortunate time-wise, where we're at.
Yeah.
By law, we do have to redistrict. I did read within the ordinance that basically says if time permits, but I think statute kind of says otherwise, that it has to be done. Am I correct?
And we can meet that. I did meet with the company or spoke to them yesterday, so we will be meeting that deadline.
Yeah, but I'm saying if we were to agree on the 5 and then wait for redistricting until March, how would that leave us?
So if we
Well,
waited,
we already started contract with them,
Right.
right? So we,
So if we, because I agree with Councilman Romero and Mayor Trujillo, is that 5 seems reasonable in regards to council, and most cities either have 5 or 7, so it's always kind of an odd number. So you don't have ties. You could still have ties with 8, so that didn't make sense to me. I like the idea of giving it to the voters to decide if they would want to increase it to 5. But I'm still not understanding the timeline, because we're going to redistrict. We're redistricting, and that has to be in by
November.
November.
And this would have to go on the ballot by November also. If voters decide to increase it by 5, then we would have to pay to get another redistricting.
Yes.
And that's 20,000 is what you're saying.
But it won't be proposed to the voters in November. It'll be proposed to the voters in March. we're on a different election
Yes.
cycle.
Yes. in
So
March.
it would be till March.
March.
And let's say they did approve to go to 5, then at that point, we would have to do another redistricting
Correct.
to create the 5th ward or the
Yes.
5th
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
And then it wouldn't be in effect until next election or the
Correct.
following
So
election.
just so you
Correct?
guys know that there's an assumption being made here that it's fine, I just want to point it out so everybody understands what it is. The assumption is if the public votes to go to 5 councilors, that means that you have to create a new ward, and that's not necessarily the
Correct.
case. You could have an elector who was just at-large, which we don't have. We don't have an at-large elector who votes with the 4 of you. I mean, you know, unless you wanted to open it up to the mayor, he's at-large. But you could have an at-large counselor that wouldn't require you to have to spend the extra 20+ thousand to redistrict, and could still add that 5th counselor. So you might want to consider putting 2 questions on the ballot. Number 1, do you want to go to 5 counselors? And if you do you want it to be at-large, or do you want to create a whole new district? That way, they really, that way it doesn't become a political issue for you guys to decide. The voters decide it, and if they want to spend the money, and they want a new district, and they want a new counselor for that district, it's on the voters.
The other thing we could do, Scott and Cassandra, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can also give the mayor a vote,
You can.
and that would create the 5th
That's
person.
basically the 5th at-large counselor, if that's what you wanted to do.
Because the mayor right now just votes on ties.
Correct.
But if you gave the mayor a vote, then we would have representation, 5 people representing an issue, or 5 potential people voting on an issue.
No, I don't like that idea.
Well, the one thing that it does do, just so you know, other than obviously it gives the mayor a vote, it gives the mayor a voting record, which right now the mayor doesn't have a voting record.
I like what you proposed about, 1, offering it to the residents to decide if they want a 5th. And I like the idea about offering it to the residents. Do you want that 5th person coming from a ward or at large? I think that's kind of a middle of the road.
And the at-large could run in any ward.
Out of any ward. I mean,
Yeah,
Yes,
they would just have to be a resident of the city.
yes.
Can we give direction for him to do that? I mean, I'm okay.
Are you guys,
Okay.
what do you think about that?
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
20 years ago, on April 11, 2005, that was my birthday. And I can't remember how old I was, but the people of Las Vegas, the committee of the people of Las Vegas, were the ones that created the application to the clerk, and they needed a sponsor to cut the council from 8 to 4. And at that time, the mayor and myself were in that council, and I opposed. But I told them that I would sponsor their application because we worked for them. And the results of that was 2,221 votes to, I believe, 221 votes, something like that, in favor of cutting down the council from 8 to 4. I think most of those people that were signed on the petition, I mean, I haven't seen probably in 4 years. I don't know where they disappeared to, or if they're not involved in city government anymore, but, well, there's one right here, Councilor Romero. But anyway, I suggested to the Charter Commission that 5 would be a good number. What I've been hearing in the public side, that they want to go back to 8. And I believe that if you elect the right person for the position, if you elect an honest person and somebody that's got the community in mind, they're going to do the right thing. And then the community needs to hold them accountable. That's the big part of it. And I think this governing body has been accountable, has been honest, has been truthful about what they do, about what they want to do in the future. And I think that the city has moved forward in the past year a lot farther than other administrations. So I wouldn't mind if you'd give them that third option to the voters, if they want a council of 8. and let them decide, 4, 5, or 8. And if they want to redistrict, and if they want to spend money on redistricting, well, then that's up to them.
Or we could still just ask them, would you like to have an at-large 5th person, period? That way we don't have to pay for redistricting.
Sure. I think the other thing that might be important to put on the ballot, along with whether you want us to go 4, 5, or 8, is what the incomes would be. Because obviously, if you got an 8, you're doubling the amount that the citizens are paying for their representatives, and some of them might want to consider that.
Well, that's what drove the whole thing for that 8 to 4.
Yep.
Was that they wanted to cut down on the number of dollars that were spent. Not necessarily the salaries. They wanted to cut down on the number of dollars that were spent. Well, that was one of the main reasons.
Okay, so we're looking at doing either stay with 4.
Well, you know what I would do? Just stay with 4 or go to 5 at large.
Clarification question to the
That
clerk.
way we don't pay redistrict.
As far as amendments, the question in the ballot should be either yeah or no, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, you can't give.
For or against.
Yeah, for or against, you can't give all these different, I mean, it's a lot harder to give all the options, either for or against.
Right.
So that makes it kind of difficult to give all the different options. What I would just suggest the 5, and then you put in the question, the language.
At large.
Yeah, just leave it at large, and then if things don't work out, we change it at the,
Yep.
we change it with the.
Would you, yes, in favor of
And the
going to
reason-
5 and 1 serving at large? I mean, the person serving at large.
Mr. Mayor. So, Madam Clerk, everything on this referendum is going to have to be for or against? Or
Yes.
Yes or no?
So on the ballot, it's going to be for or against for each separate question
So
that
there's
goes on
no
the ballot.
multiple
No.
fill in the dot? No. Okay.
And if it doesn't work, then the next voting cycle around, you put a new choice on the ballot. You don't have to go through this amending the charter and waiting 10 years. You don't have to do all that. You guys
Right.
can put those questions on the ballot as you deem fit.
So you can do in 2024, whatever changes or amendments you want to do then on the ballot.
Yep. So the question would be, are you in favor of having another member serve at large? That way we don't have to redistrict or create a new district. They can run
At
it.
large until the next districting to where maybe, or just leave it at 5 for now.
Or just leave it there for now, and then as we get to the closer to that next census, that council that's there will be burdened with figuring out whether they want
So
to
are you
change
okay
it or
with
not.
that change to 5, the recommendation?
I am.
Yeah, I'm okay with 5, but at large, does that mean,
Anyone from any ward,
you'll have 2 councilmen from your ward?
possibly,
I'll have 2 councilmen from my ward?
possibly.
And how is that gonna look like?
It doesn't matter. They serve at large.
They have to represent the full, all wards.
Biggest ward?
Well, what happens is,
That goes to your honesty.
and it's accountability, every election, if they're only paying attention to one ward, the other 3 are gonna vote against him, so it's,
Yeah.
the other 3 wards will.
If it's an honest person, they'll represent the whole city.
Like we all do.
Yes, we all do
We all do.
anyway, correct. Okay.
Amendment 2 recommended by the Charter Commission,
Amendment 2.
that's the 50% instead of the runoff.
That, I've received input on that one, and people don't like doing away with the runoff, because their concern is, if you get 4 or 5 people running in a ward, and they get 10%, or they get 12%, that means somebody can win with a low percentage.
That's the whole thing of democracy. Look what happened in the president's race 2 presidents ago.
I wouldn't say that. was democracy. I think that was beyond democracy. That
I
was
think
like
a simple majority.
messing with the voting machines.
I think it's costly, I think it prolongs
Yeah.
process to get the other person involved and to do a runoff, and then it puts the council on hold.
Mr. Mayor, it is costly. It's costly for the ones that are running. The ones, those two people, it's costly because you gotta go back out there and
Yeah.
spend more money,
And the city has to pay, how
Right.
much, $10,000?
Right.
around 30 grand.
And if I may, Mayor and Councilors, since I've been here since 2009, I've been through several elections since, there's only been once, and that would be Councilor Romero, where the person in the runoff actually took the seat. In other words, all the other times, it came out the same.
Yeah.
So,
But
I wouldn't be here if it was.
eliminating the runoff, you
The
can
one time.
put a lot of people just as challengers who have no inclination or even really want to be on the council. They just want to defeat another person. And that happens a lot in elections too.
I'm for simple majority, doing away with runoff, just to make the record clear, not that it matters.
You know, number one, it's costly to have an election. Number two, this governing body experienced already, and I don't know why we wouldn't learn from our mistakes. I mean, I know, my apologies, Mr. Rodriguez, I don't think you were here.
No, I wasn't, and
But either way, this is my point.
I teach this for a living, so I'd appreciate the respect in that regard.
But this is my point. I was here, I lived through it, and this council lived through it. And what happens is, by city charter, you're supposed to have your organizational meeting at your next following meeting after you win election. And in that organizational meeting, there's a lot of business that needs to be done. The business of how this governing body is going to run. And like Ms. Rodriguez, she didn't have an opportunity to be in that part of it. So she's stuck with it now, with the rules that we established, ordinances that we established. When an individual comes into this seat 2 months later, we've already hired management, a city manager, a city attorney, economic development director, and the police chief. And so when this individual comes in 2 months later, after $20,000 election, really, they had no say-so on who they chose to work with. And to me, that's not the way it should be. I think that if you win by one, of course, the state has its own regulations that if you, correct me wrong, Madam Clerk, if you win by a certain percentage, you can appeal that and protest that, and they'll do a recount and so forth. That's the process. But I think that if you win, you win. And that's all there is to it. The votes are counted, and you've won. Take your seat. And it doesn't delay the process. And the worst thing about this, it divides. It gets to be like a little bit of a division when you come in late, because 4 of you are already going full speed, and somebody else comes in, and they're trying to catch up. So it makes it difficult, I think, to have a runoff and somebody coming in at the late end of the election. So I would support to just do away with it and do away with runoffs and just go ahead and go with
Simple majority.
simple majority.
Well, there's pros and cons for both sides. May you just give it, like you said, to the voters and let the voters decide.
And the question would be, are you in favor of runoff or elections? If you are, then we'll keep them. If not,
Are you voting to repeal the runoff portion of the city charter?
Yes.
Well, this governing body has that authority not to just cancel the runoff. If we
Well,
wanna-
it should go to the-
If we want to do that.
I think it should go to the voters.
Yeah, in the recommendation amendments to the charter, yeah.
That's a recommendation from the Charter Commission?
Yes.
Yeah, to cancel. Yeah, that's a recommendation.
But they want it to go
But
to the
this-
voters.
This governing body has either way to go. It's our decision if we want to put it on there, or if we want to
So do we,
let the public.
you guys agree with the?
I don't support it.
I don't-
No, I don't support the runoff.
No, you're supporting what the recommendation was, changing the requirement from a simple to a simple majority.
Letting that go to the voters.
That would be the question.
Right.
It goes to the voters.
And if it loses, then we keep the runoff.
Amendment 3A, B, C, D, all those just kind of, basically, the recommendation was that the mayor come up with two names instead of the one.
Oh, for directors?
Yeah, I mean, they're all all those are pretty much the same, city manager, city attorney, city clerk, and police chief.
So you moved on to the next one, so we clarified that.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And you're gonna work on the wording, right? Because the wording has to be,
We'll work on the wording so that it's a yes/no decision, or approve,
Okay.
disapprove decision.
so it's not confusing to the voters.
For or against?
For or against.
On 3A through 3D, are you guys okay with those?
So what if two qualifiers, what if the council don't want two of the qualifiers?
I just think it's another step, another bureaucratic step.
I think we're limiting ourselves. Because what happens if you don't like the two people that the mayor brought forth, the two names?
Well, then you vote, and
You vote
that's
them
the way
down,
you
yeah.
vote.
And then you bring two more?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying it could be a bureaucratic nightmare.
You see, and.
We'll never get anybody appointed.
No. And my beef on this was the process, I didn't like the process. I didn't like the process of bringing somebody up here that we're gonna reject and humiliate. Say, no, thank you, you're qualified, but no, thank you, we don't want you. I mean, that's pretty brutal for the process. I think that the process ought to be where mayor and council together should interview these people and decide.
But that's not an option that they're presenting here.
So we could change
We
it.
can
We
make our
can
own
change
option.
it.
We can change our own,
Yeah.
we can make our own option.
Correct.
These are
It's a
recommendations.
bureaucratic nightmare, but do whatever you want.
Yeah, these are the options.
We'll never get
Recommend.
anybody approved.
I like what you're suggesting.
I'm saying,
Michael.
these are the recommendations of the
Yeah.
commission. I mean, if anybody has different ideas here or different recommendations, they can put them forth. If we don't like them, throw them in the trash. But I'm saying, when we bring somebody for the position of police chief, that the mayor wants and recommends as a high qualified person, individual. And there's questions over here saying, well, we don't think he's the right person for that job. When you bring that person here and you tell them to their face that really, we don't want you, or you're not qualified, which is a little bit of a brutal process for me. I don't know, I just think it's pretty rough to handle that.
Well, that's what you're elected for,
But-
is to
but
make
if-
those
if-
tough
if-
decisions.
But I'm saying if mayor and council would be involved in an interview process prior
Yes.
to confirming their appointment, I mean, I think that would be a little bit process than this. And
Well, I guess the only concern would be is that there's four of you and there's one of the mayor, so if
Right.
the mayor's not gonna get his choice of the city manager to work with, then you guys could override his decision to where basically whoever he would
There's no use for a
eventually put on as a choice would be his third, fourth, fifth, 10th choice. And if we do it the way that the charter amendment group selected it, you'll always be telling somebody no, because there'll be two. You'll always be
Yeah.
telling one of them no. Right now, as it stands, mayor brings one name, you may tell him no, you may tell him yes, 50-50, but if you have to bring two or three or four, you're gonna be telling multiple people no. Guaranteed, you're gonna be telling multiple people no. So, I mean, part of it is this as well. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel, but if you're going for a high-level director position, you shouldn't be so super sensitive and soft that if the council tells you, I'm sorry, we don't think you're the best option. You know, if you're a professional and you're at that level of heading up a director, a whole division or whatever, department, you don't need to be a super sensitive plaintiff.
Correct.
So, I mean, those are just some other things to consider. It's not like these are, you know, people who are going for their first job interview or something. These are people who've been in the industry a long time. You don't get to be a department director unless you've
Okay.
had some experience and some education, so that's the other thing to consider.
I don't know, I'm about efficiency. I mean, we could spend 6 months approving one department head. Literally, because we only meet twice a month. And so you said no to the other, and then the next month, and the next month, and so we're out, all this time we're out of a director that should have been in place right away.
But you could call a special meeting.
But
for
you
that.
still have the power to reject a person.
Yeah, but not really.
Yes, you do.
So let me ask you guys a question. How historically has it worked if you've got a city manager position that goes unfilled for a month or 2 months or 3 months? How does that, or city attorney or police chief or city clerk, those are like essential functioning offices. How do you, I'm just anticipating if there was a kind of a locked, this council's all locked up with the mayor and nobody wants.
I lived it. You have an interim for forever.
But how healthy is that if you just
It's
have
not.
an interim?
Or you have one person overseeing 6 departments. And it's not very healthy. I'm telling you, this is a bureaucratic nightmare. You still have the opportunity to say, no, I don't like the candidate, and that's your
That's
vote,
it.
and move on.
And Mayor, if I could kind of just add to that, what happened in the past was, this is the only name I'm putting up, and you guys like it, fine, if not, then, and so, because, it was like, of course, those discussions take place. I think the 2 is fair, because, as we did in Councilor Rodriguez's case, of course, this is going to be pertaining to this, had he given, she was one of the, one at the time, had he given us the 2 names right away, we would have been able to pick the one that we agreed on right off the bat instead of kind of waiting. So I think the 2 is fair, at the end of the day, it's going to be his, not coming the recommendations from us. It's, he, as a mayor, you have already, well, I think this one would be, well, and then at the end of the day, you pick your top one. But I'm sure, Mayor, you had many candidates for city manager in case one didn't go through. So you already had that kind of idea as to, well, if this one's get shut down, I'm thinking this one. I think that 2 is kind of fair.
Yeah, that seems fair. Because you already have, like you said, you already have probably two or three possibly in mind. At
And I know
least
they had
2.
suggested 3 at first, but I think, you do 3, that's even, 2 is, I think, fine enough. If we can't pick from 2, then we have some issue,
2 top candidates, yeah.
Agree?
Yeah, agree.
So on all those items,
If that's the agreement, okay. 2 names?
so based off the
2 top
Charter
candidates.
Commission's recommendations, we're going to. One of the items pertaining to, that wasn't addressed here, that I would like some language,
Item number 4.
unless you, I'll look for mine unless you guys want to move on.
Do you have any recommendations?
Is that 3D is okay too? All 3s, yeah,
Yeah, all
okay.
up there.
I think you guys said all for all of the 3s.
Okay, amendment number 4 suggestion was modifying the time for the period reviewed on the city charter and specifying the duration of the city charter commission. And, the present one is 5 years, and within the 10-year, within the 10-year period.
Yeah,
with
5 and then
existence.
10. Correct.
And what they're recommending is 3
3.
years
And then
after the
5.
effective date, giving them more time, and no less than once every 5 years. Which I think it's okay the way we are right now.
Well, you guys have the option of calling,
At any time.
you guys have the option of trying to amend the charter anytime you want.
Anytime we
You don't
want.
have to do it every 10 years. I don't know that you need to, it might be good to have a safety net in there, a minimum of every 10 years.
Or, yeah.
But here's the other thing to consider. When it comes to the redistricting, you guys have a certain pattern set up where there's a commission, and then there is a professional consultant. And the council may want to consider for both the redistricting and for the charter review, having the option to do, not that you shall appoint a committee for both, but you may appoint a committee for either one, redistricting or for the charter amendments. Or if the council desires, they can hire just a consultant to do the redistricting or just a consultant to do the charter review. Or if the council doesn't like either one of those, and the council can make, the council can't do its own redistricting, it would have to hire a consultant. But for the charter review, the council could do it. Or a combination of all three. That way you're not limited to, we're locked in, we've got to put this committee together, we've got to wait on this or wait on that. The council's got some options on how they want to deal with it.
I agree.
If they do want to go to a public committee, that's great. If they want to choose a professional consultant, which has its benefits as well, they each have their benefits, and you could either do them independently or you could do all three at once. Now, with the redistricting, you would have to hire the professional consultant. You wouldn't have an option on that one.
But for the charter committee, we don't necessarily need a commission.
Especially if you want to do it like every year, every 2 years,
Right.
and say you want to do it every 3 years, just on your own whim, why would you be locked into doing it with a commission?
Right.
It seems like that's a lot of resources. I get it, every 10 years you want to have at a minimum, maybe you do a big overhaul or something, but if you wanted to do it, every other year, it's up to you guys. I just think that you guys ought to leave yourselves some options. That's all I'm saying, just consider that.
Well, and the only purpose of the commission is to get more residents involved in the process. But, I like the idea of having multiple options. So the choice of having a commission or...
And just because we have a commission doesn't mean that the public had access to their opinion, because still, this hasn't even gone to the public. This was 4 people sitting around a table.
Well, I've gotten a lot of calls from residents, so they got the information somehow.
Well, this is going to go to public input after we're done here. But just because we have a commission doesn't mean the public had a voice in this. These recommendations to them, they acted upon based on themselves. They didn't act on the best interest of the public.
Well, I think that this commission that sat here, and I was able to be a part, at least a viewer, and somewhat a participant in some of the stuff they did. I think they did a good job under circumstances of trying to involve the public. The problem is, we're in COVID, and most of their meetings were online, and so they did some stuff, but it was difficult. And so what's to say, that down the line, we're not going to have similar difficulties. So I guess just leaving the options is preferable.
Right. I don't think we absolutely need a commission. I'm all for hiring it out or let the city attorney be the person to review the charter.
The only other thing that I put, that I had suggested in here, under the charter review amendment, is you may want to add language in here that says, any recommended changes, whether they come from a committee or a consultant or maybe just the council themselves, any recommended changes under the section shall be reviewed for compliance with applicable law by an attorney experienced in this, and I know you guys are already doing that, but if you put it in the charter, then what that does is that says before anything goes out to the public, that it's going to be looked at to make sure it's legally compliant with whatever else exists out there. And that, I know you kind of lock yourself into it, but there's a real danger in putting things on the ballot that haven't been reviewed to make sure they're legally compliant. That's my only... That's just kind of a safety.
And that's not in the charter now.
It's not in the charter. Now, you guys are doing it, and I think that's great. It's an excellent move, and we found a way to do it at no cost to the city, which is even better. But to put it in there just as it's a CY, cover your rear type of a provision.
So, Scott, are you talking about section 4204?
It would be...
Adding that one?
4204. I think it is section 105. It's in section 1.05. It talks about charter review amendment.
Okay, there you go.
Let me grab the chart.
I think it should be the role of the city attorney to review the charter.
Well, this one is reading
Yeah.
that it should be 5 years, and the governing body may appoint a committee.
Yeah, but we don't have to.
But that's what you're proposing?
Yes, I'm proposing that the council has the choice whether they want to do a committee
Oh, okay.
or a consultant or both, or none. Maybe you don't want to do a consultant or a committee, you just want to come up with some changes yourselves every other year, every second year, every third year, just so long as an attorney reviews it to make sure it's compliant and it's lawful. I just think you ought to leave yourself some options.
Yeah, I like the idea of having an option, but I do want to keep one of the options as a commission.
Oh, yeah,
So
certainly.
that whatever council decides in the future, that's one of their options.
Would you suggest those changes for?
Not in the wording of a ballot. Right now, you got to find out, you have to word it on a ballot so that it's, are you in favor of or not?
Mhm.
So what are we going to put on the ballot?
Are you in favor of repealing and replacing section 105A with the following language?
And then you have to put this.
And then you have the language and they read it, and if they're in favor, they're in favor. If they're not in favor, they're not in favor. They can read it and make the decision.
And then if they're not in favor, then we keep the same language.
It stays
that's
the
in
same.
place. Correct. Yeah.
So, and then on Amendment 4, we'll go with this one.
Okay, the red one?
Yeah, section 1. Sure.
Could I, going back to, I know we discussed the amendments towards the appointed positions, 5.06, 5.07. I would strongly encourage that we put in an item F on those that would say non-approval by the council for any or non-approval by the council shall be recognized by the mayor and city manager. And the reason for that is we ran into the situation where we read it one way, another read it the other, and it turned into a big situation. So now, with this language, the vote of the non-approval basically means that they
Approve.
yes. Is that fair?
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's, for instance, you have the authority on the agenda. So you recommend removal of city manager. Well, if a vote takes place, and we'll use, sorry, if a vote takes place where the majority say no, well, it was still removed, based off of the mayor and city manager. So, so my thing is we put the language that basically the votes of the majority of non-approval shall be recognized by the mayor and city manager
Yes.
For appointment or also for dismissal?
for removal. So it's under the removal portion on 5.06, or on any of it, if you go to any of the positions.
Okay.
Okay, you're saying that-
there's F.
You're saying the mayor and city manager can just disregard the
And
council?
that's exactly what they did.
And they move in the direction that they want to go in. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I just want that language stating that, if the mayor proposes that they be removed, but the council says no, well,
Then that's.
we all know that, okay, it's no, so they stay in their place. But, it was interpreted that, no, they couldn't.
And that would be for only those 4 positions that are mentioned in the
And
charter?
directors' positions.
Huh?
And well, there's the 4, and then there's also the language in the city charter that addresses on directors. I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, basically, so, so for sure on the appointed ones, but then there's also the one where the city manager can also,
5.07.
okay, well, 5.07, well, yeah, 5.06, which it's, so it would be F on 5.06. It would be,
So 5.07D only permits the city manager to recommend removal of a director. Neither mayor nor council can recommend the removal of a director, only city manager can do that,
Can recommend it.
to recommend it. You guys can confirm it, but the removal of a director other than the four, I'll call them the four,
okay, but,
Yeah.
that can't start from a council member or
yeah,
a
yeah,
mayor.
where did you find it? I mean,
507D. In the charter.
507? I have my charter here, but I don't.
507D
D.
of the original charter.
Yes. Department directors are at-will employees who may be suspended or removed by the city manager, subject to the approval of the governing body.
I guess I have the one.
Let me see this one. That's not 507D.
I must have gotten that.
Oh, you got the, yeah,
Yeah, I got it. So as far as the, and you're correct, Scott, is that on the directors, so this is here my concern again with the director. City manager puts them on, same thing, same situation, but a director. Comes to council, I want to remove him. Well, council says, no, don't remove him. So I want that language in there that, in that position with the directors, then the city manager will, on that one specific, then we would say, non-approval by council shall be recognized by the city manager.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So I'm just saying that way, I mean, of course, city manager's gonna say, well, nope, I'm not, they're not gonna come back, they're gonna be on leave until you guys approve it. I don't wanna, so I'm just saying is, we're putting language in there that, we shouldn't have to put it, but we've been down that road. So let's put the language in there where the council's vote is recognized.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, I think the checks and balances is, with this system, is that the city manager doesn't recognize, city manager says, I want to remove this director, city council says, no, you may not. If the city manager doesn't respect your authority, you just remove the city manager. He serves at the pleasure of the governing body. I'm just explaining, that's the check and balance. I'm happy to put it in there, but just so you guys know, you guys always have the nuclear option.
Or you could have removed the city manager.
Well, in this case, it was.
Yeah, the
it was
previous
different. That one was different, I'm just kind of thinking outside. We haven't, and the directors, we haven't run into that position, but I just want to, that'd be okay. I think it's something minor, can be added into that.
It's a second check, so to speak, yeah.
Just clarify it, make it plain.
Yeah.
So, if we can figure out this one day, Councilman. So, I wasn't here, but in the past, I guess the interim city manager put one of our directors on leave without pay, or with pay. So, how did that interim director have that authority?
My exact question.
Without consent of council?
What happened?
Because you're in charge, mayor and council are in charge of that director. So how can that happen?
Yeah. It's a good question.
Well, admin leave is a different question. This says suspended or removed. So the city manager can suspend or remove only, it says, subject to the approval by the governing body. But admin leave, is that different than suspension?
I think our thing says that only the city manager can approve administrative leave.
Okay, so that falls into a different category than suspension or removal. Although I'd like to know, I don't know, but I'd like to know the difference between suspension and admin pay. Was it with leave, was it with pay or without pay?
with pay.
Okay, either way, that's, the admin leave is a form of suspension. You're suspending someone from their duties. So,
So how do we close out that loophole?
yeah,
I thought it was covered.
But it should-
I never understood how that could have been done.
Well, we can also, it could also be covered in ordinance. Doesn't need to be on the charter.
And again, that's where, I mean, I know people took it as to it's a lawsuit. At the end of the day, and Scott, you know what a declaratory action is.
Yeah.
Basically, you're just going to the court saying, I mean, of course, the mayor had the authority with the agenda, so she controlled everything. Even though we put in agenda item requests, we all did that. We tried everything within our powers and means that should be happening. That was all rejected. Simple thing, 3 of us request an item on the agenda. I mean, automatically, by law, city mayor should do it. That was rejected. So, I mean, I know it seems like, well, how'd you guys let that happen? Believe me, I mean, we tried every method that we could. That's why within this, I'd like to make sure that we put that in there. That way there's no, I mean, I don't know what to say, except it was a horrible experience, and I want nobody else to go through it.
sure. Suspended is not really a term that's used as much anymore. Administrative leave is the
Right.
parlance. So, really, it's just, it's a linguistic issue here. Suspended and admin leave are basically
Can
the
you
same.
keep somebody endlessly on admin leave?
Well, that's what's going on right now with the COVID mandates. If people don't want to take the COVID vaccine,
And they
these
did
businesses are putting
in
them
the
on
past.
permanent admin leave without pay.
No, but with pay, is there a limitation?
No,
I don't know the answer to that.
it's not in our ordinance. It says up to 2 weeks.
But
Okay.
there you're talking about an employee. We're talking about a
Director.
director.
Yeah.
No, the employee, the city manager is overall in charge of them, whatever he does. But I'm talking about the directors,
Mhm.
your clerk, your police chief. How can an interim city manager send somebody home without the governing approval?
Yeah,
Because
that seems good.
that's what's on here on D, section 507D. It has to come before mayor and council in order to do that.
They did.
They did?
They did, and the council didn't approve the removal, so
Did not approve
did
it.
not approve.
And that's why you want the non-approval to be,
Stated that it's basically, I mean, common sense would tell you that it's recognized, but
yeah,
simple, it's put it in there and there's no
yeah, that makes
question or
sense.
interpretation. Did you add those, Scott?
Non-approval.
Yes, we can add, I think you can add that as an E or something. Non-approval.
So basically, what I put in, I mean, it was E or F, can't remember what it was, but whatever. Non-approval by council shall be recognized by the mayor or city manager.
Scott, so that the voter doesn't have to sit there and vote through every one of these, can it just be one question? Do you agree with the following changes, yes or no?
That I'll have to look into. That's been very contentious.
Yeah.
That's been an issue going on for a number of elections now, so I'll have to look at
I
that.
think there might be items that we could, I mean, I don't think that,
I think that
Community will kind of
there's a
question.
name for that, I forget what it is, but you're basically, like, it's kind of like straight ticket voting, but I have to look into that.
Just trying to make it easier on the
Yeah,
voter.
sure.
I mean, to assure
It's a lot of items.
Right,
better participation.
sure.
And if they agree with all these, yes. If they don't, if they disagree with one of them, then they don't agree with any of them.
It's heavily influenced by what the first question on the ballot is. If the first question on the ballot, they say no, then they vote no on all the rest.
Unless you have an information campaign.
Sure.
And provide information on all of these and the pros and cons. Yeah,
Yeah.
which happens a lot usually on referendums and things of that nature,
Right.
initiatives.
Is that it for the recommendation?
There was 608. Could you explain that one, Scott?
608, which one is that?
It's 1608, they put on here. It's right after recommendation 4.
Oh, yes, 608. So 6.08 is under the committees section, the committees that the council can create. And right now it says that regarding advisory committees, that the governing body may establish advisory committees of duration less than a year as it deems appropriate. I think we just ought to take out the duration of less than a year. The council ought to be able to set committees whenever it wants, for whatever length of time it wants. I don't know why this was less, that it limits the council to these advisory committees whose duration is less than a year. I don't get that. I think it just restricts the council's ability to set up committees. Unless you're a permanent committee that's listed in the charter, then you automatically have to have a duration of less than a year. And that doesn't make sense. The tree board's not in the charter, but its duration is not less than a year. So it's this either or thing that
I agree.
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there's a story behind all this that motivated that language, but I can't figure out what it is. And I don't see how it's applicable anymore. If it was an issue in the past, maybe, but I don't see how it's an issue now. I mean, all committees are advisory committees with the exception of lodger's tax. And are they the only one?
Planning and zoning?
Planning and zoning. Planning and zoning and lodger's tax. Those are the only ones, and they're even mostly advisory.
Right.
But planning and zoning does make decisions about people's applications.
Right.
And lodger's tax has some of that ability. But other than that, they're all advisory.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I know that this wasn't involved in this discussion, Scott, and I know I'm going to bring the issue up, whether it's popular or not, but I want to talk about compensation.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we're tied to a compensation that's determined by another governing body doesn't fit well with me.
Okay.
So it says that our compensation will be the same as the county commission. And one is that we should not be committed to another governmental body for decisions that should be made by the city. And second, I think that at any time, the city council should be able to bring up compensation as an issue.
Where did you see the compensation tied to county?
Well, I don't know where it is. I think it's in statute.
Okay, because our charter doesn't say that. Our charter just lays out a fixed amount for mayor and each councilor, and a fixed annual amount.
Mr. Romero?
If I could add to that. Some of the concern, because there have been individuals in our community that have, I know they would be great elected officials, but they choose not to. I mean, we all know the amount of time that it takes to be a council member. Somebody that, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that my family has a business, I know Councilman Torres retired.
I work full-time.
And we know that it's very difficult, to get up, and I guess your first time, Mr. Mayor, how hard it is to, get away from work, and you have that ability, but somebody that isn't, a boss in an organization or somewhere, they don't have it. So if we increased the salary a bit, it might tend to, bring in more people to run for office because, a younger generation, I guess we could say. And, it might, that's a suggestion. I think that 10,000 is, for the amount of work that you put into, it takes a lot. And, we're fortunate enough that we can, but others that I know that have thought about running for office, don't run because, there's no way that they could take off that much time and they can't be, they have families to feed. I mean, young people have families and that, so I too agree that, I think the compensation needs to be looked at. And I don't know how we could include that in here, how of course, it's going to be determined by the voters, but that's something that should be looked at, and I know that other communities have done that in order to try to draw a more variety of candidates.
And I'll be honest, I'll be honest that compensation hasn't been looked at, and we're sort of tied to by statute. I don't know what statute it is, but I have a feeling that we should be able to, as a governing body, entertain the possibilities or entertain the whole notion of salary from within ourselves and not be tied to any other governmental agency. And I don't know what statute it's in or whatever. I just, and I'm really talking from good experience with this council. They all work. They go to meetings, they answer calls, they go to community events. They're very involved people. And sometimes, I think it's, for lack of a better term, I think it's the salary that we're paid isn't very compensatory. What's the word? To the amount of work that we devote to this. So I'm really in favor of us having the ability to be able to say we will get paid this amount. And I don't know where it's tied or how it's tied to the county commission, but it shouldn't be. We're our own governing body, and we should make the decision as to what the compensation should be. But I don't know how to put that in. I know that what's in the charter is a set amount.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the charter doesn't tie it to anything in the county.
Well, I know that that's what it's based on.
Okay.
Is that we're paid the exact same amount as a county commissioner.
Right.
And so if the county commission votes to increase their salary, then we increase it, but that's just by happenstance. I think this governing body should be able to determine what compensation we should have.
Another thing for your consideration as a council is that tying certain obligations of governing body members to their pay. So let's say you get somebody that gets elected and they decide they only want to make one meeting a month or one meeting every 2 months. There should be some provision in there that, or let's say they show up for the first 5 minutes of the meeting and then they decide they just want to leave.
Yeah.
What that does is that has some accountability that if you're going to be a counselor, and you're going to get paid, you're an employee of the city, that there's certain bare minimums. Now you guys have to decide what those are. I don't know. I mean, there's always times that one of you's got to be gone for either family stuff or work or personal health. We don't want to mess with that, but I mean, we've all seen it abused during you guys' time on the council. Have seen it abused in the past for
Yep.
So I don't know. That's just a consideration as well. That way, there's some minimum expectation. I don't think it's an issue with any of you guys. I know all of you guys work overtime for considerably more than you're paid, but just for future, especially if you're going to consider raising it. Now, I don't know what the threshold is you'd have to raise it to in order to get young people and other people to kind of quit their jobs and be full-time counselors. I mean, you'd have to do, you'd have to raise it significantly before young people,
And that might not be even comparison to like a full-time employment, but I can tell you that our compensation right now needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Just because I've had the experience of being a council person and I've had the experience of being a mayor, and for the compensation. It's, not that we're doing everything for compensation, but let's talk fairness,
Yeah.
okay? And not all the time is someone doing it for the money, but let's just talk fairness, human fairness for the amount of work that is expected of us. And so I don't know what the amount is that we would consider changing it to.
Sure.
And it's never a popular issue, but it's an issue that out of complete human fairness and I think it needs to be examined. But I don't know how we would include that in or remove it from the charter to say that that's a fixed dollar amount. I don't even know if the charter should have that, is what I'm saying. I think that portion should be left up to the governing body.
Right. Well, I mean, if you just break down the numbers, if each of you was putting in 20 hours a week, which I know a lot of you guys put in a lot more than that every week, but if you just did a minimum of 20 hours a week, let's do 50 weeks out of the month, because, you take 2 off for vacation, you're still only making $10 an hour. As mayor and councilor.
Yeah.
So when you break it down that way and you can compare it,
Minus $10.
you're not even, you're not even,
Minus $10
you're not even making minimum wage.
29 cents, yeah. Yeah, so I'm just saying that we talked, and those were some of the recommendations when we met with the Charter Commission. I brought that up, and so did other council people. They brought up compensation, and that didn't land up as one of the things that they were proposing.
They said they weren't gonna touch it.
So I'm just saying that just because they didn't touch it doesn't mean that the subject can't be had.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you guys want to, I don't know whether you just want to come up with a fixed number to put in here for the voters to vote yea or nay on, or if you have some other type of idea of how you want to structure that, but there's no reason you can't put it on there.
And that number is there because it was said that that's what the commissioners get compensated for. That's where that number came from. I don't know where it is, though, in statute.
It's not.
That we'll get paid the same as commission.
Oh, that's,
No, actually, Mayor, going back, it was something that came up, I think the Charter Commission just put out that number. Actually, if you would look on statute, I think County Commission is right about at 24,000.
Then I don't know if it's in statute, how that got left behind. I'm just saying that it should be considered, or if we want to maybe at this point just consider it amongst us and then see how we're going to word it. But, so the commission is how much now?
24, 25.
I believe it's 25,000 to the commissioners.
And we're at 10,000?
So you may want to tie your compensation to the county commissioners.
Well-
That would give you a...
Yeah, that'll give you, then you can increase it without going to the voters.
Do you know where it's written, Mike, in statute?
I don't know, I remember, it's been a long time, but, in 2006, when the council went from
824.
8 to 4.
That's when they
Well, no,
increased it.
when we were at 8 councilmen, we were at, I think we started at 10,000 a year. And then we jumped up to 15,000. And then when the commissioners, jumped to 19,999, the council jumped to 1999, and that's when the community had a fit. But I think you're right, Mr. Mayor. I think the compensation on the charter itself will need to be changed to the wording that we will go with whatever the state statute reads, and according to that, or something like that. But that's the reasoning how come they were able to track it down
Right.
to 15,000.
I remember that.
And then back to 10,000. So they did 2 jumps. They went back from 1999 to 15 and then to 10.
Right.
So,
And so it's worth exploring what the statute says, or if it's in statute, and if it is, then, first of all, then we have to make some adjustments. Second, we would have to change the amount on the charter.
Yeah, like I said, you may want to set it up to where the charter has it's not a fixed number.
So I'm asking you if you could research where
Yes.
it is that
Yes,
that is written.
yes, I can.
Okay.
Because we're a chartered organization, that's gonna have some effect on it, but I'm happy to look at that.
Okay.
And then it falls back into Mayor that the charter, our city charter requires us to do our own policies and our own
Right.
governing, so, I mean, we can set fees and we can set fines and salaries. We do on everything else.
So that portion wouldn't have to go to the voters?
But right now, it's in there, so we would have
We
to.
would
Right.
have to take it to the
Right.
voters.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Remove it and give the power back to a governing body. I don't know. What do you think, Dr.
No.
Rodriguez?
Well,
And research.
based on other communities, anytime you ask for an increase for government officials, it always gets voted down, so it's kind of a waste to put it on the ballot because it's going to get voted down. But how you're stating it is differently. You're trying to remove it from the charter. So,
Or maybe not. If it's in docket or if it's in
and it may not even,
statute somewhere,
Yeah.
then that's what we have to reflect on the.
it may not even have to go to the voters.
Right.
Correct.
Well, you have to go to the voters to remove it from the charter.
Yeah, but we may not want to remove it.
But it's on the charter.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is if he finds it that it's in statute somewhere,
And not the charter. That
then
overrides.
it has to be on the charter that it will, that has to be removed. You understand what I'm saying?
Mr. Mayor, maybe the best thing to do is have, I know Scott needs to put all this together, but maybe he could research and kind of see what that is. We just give him direction to research what others are doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to research it.
Well, research where that dollar amount came from. And research the fact that it's been impressed in my memory that we would be compensated what the commission is making. Did that ever ring a bell with you, anybody?
My knowledge going back to the 824 and kind of following the charter, as it was being developed and everything, that was just a member of the charter commission at the time. And if I remember correctly, there was I think there was a proposal at the time for a reduction in salary because it was at 20, I think right at 20 or something like that. And if I remember correctly, I wasn't a member directly of the committee of the people at the time, but my father was, so I kind of knew what was going on. So there was a proposal at the time, two-member council, I can't remember who proposed it, got rejected. That kind of set up a firestorm. There was different things happening within the council where basically the committee felt there was no movement, I think. When that didn't happen, that set up a firestorm as well. You know what, let's reduce it from there.
There's too much fighting, we don't want to.
They reduced it from the 8 to 4, and then at that time, then I think Mayor Marquez put together a charter. The whole charter commission came kind of from him. Mayor Marquez put the charter commission together. From there, the individuals on the charter commission came up with the salary, and they put it in there in order to. There was a lot of input, and I think a lot of that input came from the original, well, we should, lower the salary, and they just came up with the number. And at that time, I think there was an evaluation of what other city councilors were getting at the time. This was in 2008. 2008, 2007, right around there. So of course, 10,000 back then was fair. I think we've come to a point to where, it's different. So, but that's kind of, my recollection, as to how that transpired.
Okay.
It was the commission itself is the one that put that figure in there.
And there was a statute that existed that dealt with compensation for governing bodies, but it was only for non-charter municipalities, which means it doesn't cover us, it doesn't apply to us. And there was an amendment in 1995 that said that annual compensation paid to the mayor or another member of the governing body shall not exceed the annual compensation paid to a member of the board of county commissioners of the county. But that's that doesn't exist anymore, and that only covered non-charter municipalities, so.
But I think at the time, when they set that number in the charter, that's what the county commission was getting.
Could have been. It very well could have been. But right now, I haven't found anything that binds this council's compensation to what they're making at the county level. I'll continue to look
Okay.
but
Very well.
So just to go, Mr. Mayor, for the record, that most of the presented amendments to the charter from the Charter Commission were pretty much accepted, except for the change from, they recommended 8, we went to 5. Other than that, the rest of their recommended amendments we followed. So I think that's important to note, because I know they felt that that we weren't going to listen to them, and I think we did take all the recommendations into consideration, and that's important to know.
Mr. Mayor. So, Scott, we're all agreed on this, section 6.08? Yes. Advisory committee?
yes, to remove the duration of 1 year from the advisory committees.
Okay. Now, I had a couple of my own that I wanted to see if Mayor and Council would entertain the idea of putting it on there or not, but on section 302, of powers and duties, on the city charter, powers and duties of the governing body, Mayor and Council. I wanted to see if the council would entertain the idea of including the mayor's executive orders. Powers should go before council at the next regular council meeting for confirmation.
What do you mean?
That whenever a mayor declares an executive order, that item be brought to us at the next following meeting for confirmation or acceptance.
I wouldn't. In the event of an emergency, the mayor should be able to do.
No, I'm not saying that mayor can't act. I'm just saying that it should be brought back to us.
But what I'm saying is, if we have to act on something today,
Yes, you can act.
well, the mayor can still do one.
You can act whenever you want. I'm just saying that when you do act, that it comes to the mayor, to council at the next meeting
For what?
for confirmation.
So then it's not valid?
Yeah, it's valid.
I think I have that.
It's valid.
Oh, well, that's not what you're saying.
No.
So the mayor would still have the ability to do emergency or executive order?
Yes.
It just, and then what if it does, what if you agree not to do it at the next meeting?
Well, that's up to council. But if you get a mayor that's not as good or clean as you, so a mayor that wants to declare whatever they want for the wrong reasons, I think that council should have a
I don't, that's why it's
I'm
considered an
just bringing it
executive,
up.
I think that's why it's considered an executive order.
I'm just bringing it to council. If that's a suggestion.
Mr. Mayor?
And I think, Scott, I know we're a charter, a home rule charter, but I had that listed on mine, the executive orders. But I think there's a kind of checks and balances with executive orders, statute-wise, as far as municipalities and statute.
What executive orders can be, what areas they can address?
I think there's a statute to that, but
There's usually a
I don't know, I mean-
clarification. Even for the president and governors.
Well, yeah, that's another political fight that's going on now, especially to do with the healthcare related executive orders. There's state legislatures that want to be able to have kind of a check on that, and so that some of that's up in the air as well.
And I don't know if this is where Councillor Montoya is kind of looking at, but this is kind of the way I was looking at that is, and I agree with Councillor Montoya, I think, Mr. Mayor, you've made the right decisions with your executive orders. The way I was looking at this in the executive orders was, you could bypass, as an executive order, you know, you could override ordinances and stuff like that. So and I don't know, this is where I was looking at it, I don't know if you were, was a checks and balances, some type of checks and balances with the, I mean, as you presented your executive orders, and I think you did a couple of them, and we approved them. So, I mean, it's just that checks and balances, I mean, we don't want, and again, this goes back, when I was, doing all my things on the charter, goes back to.
And where I'm speaking of is living this last year.
Yes.
Is when there's actually a health emergency and there has to be an executive order.
Yeah, and you, I mean, we're not stopping you from doing it, we're just, I mean, I think it's fair for us to supplement, and when you did a couple of them, I mentioned you to this, well, Mr. Mayor, why don't you bring it before council, don't you take the heat for some of this stuff? You know what I mean, and I think, if it's a bad executive order, which I mean, for the record, you've never done, but if there can be an executive order done by a mayor, and we gotta look long-term, 10 years, 20 years down the line, is if we have that bad mayor that starts to govern by executive order and not coming to the, following the process of, well, executive order, and technically they can do that. But I think in statute, and I'll have to look it up, but I think there is some types of checks and balances maybe that we could.
Well, just so you guys know, and I don't think any of you know yet, but the city clerk and I have been working on a proposed ordinance which would deal with this, especially in light of the fact that we just came through COVID. We did have to do a bunch of executive type orders and declare emergencies and curfews and different things, and you guys did work together fine, but I think what it revealed to us, and even with the county manager, the city manager being the former Office of Emergency Management, we noticed how our ordinances were sorely lacking in that area. So we have worked together over this week, certainly, to try to put an ordinance together that would address that. So it may be something that we want to address with an ordinance rather than, my only concern is that I think the voters are already going to have a lot on their plate. So this might be something that we want to deal with in ordinance. And we've put together an ordinance that we intended to get to you probably next month. So that may be something that I want to postpone, but that was on our radar as well.
I think that's fair.
We weren't prepared for COVID, and I mean, nobody could have seen it coming, and our ordinances just didn't allow for some of the actions that needed to take place.
And I know, the mayor did take some heat from certain individuals, well, he should override, and I meant my comments to him were, Mayor, bring it to council and we support you. I mean, they were the right decisions for our community. Our numbers today are because of those executive orders that he set. And I think we even gave him the power under the emergency declaration to do that. So I guess you're right, There's a couple of things, and I know in speaking with Councilor Montoya, the other one was addressing the lodger's tax board.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, I'll let you.
So we'll go ahead and do that, then we'll look at that. The other thing is that on section 6.06, lodger's tax board, I also wanted to, I don't think that lodger's tax board is working the way it should be, and I think that after next week, I think things will be better. But I think we need to increase where it says that we only have one member shall be a resident of the city and represent the general public. I think we need to increase that by 2. Because sometimes they don't have enough of a quorum. Right now there are 5 members, and I think it'd be a lot easier and a lot more involving and a lot more direction given if we had more members in that board.
So how many resident seats do you want total?
I would ask to change it to 2, add 2.
2. So it would be a total of 3. There would be
Yes.
3.
Yes, total of 3. Because right now, we're at the minimal, and that's what, I guess it's required of us, 5 as a minimum, but it doesn't have a maximum.
Right.
So I think more representation, the better off we are on that. And then again, I don't know, I kind of tingled with this idea, but I don't think it can be done because, as you all know, we wasted a lot of time and money on the last election, and we had a council seat that was vacant for 2 months, and we had to appoint another individual to that seat. But meantime, that individual decided to leave, and it cost the taxpayers some money. And I'm talking, 2 elections. That's $40,000. And I think that if somebody in the public wants to run for office and they don't know what they're getting themselves into, and they win, and they get in for the wrong motives or the wrong reasons, or whatever reasons there might be, I think that if they decide that they don't like our faces, or our culture, or our way of thinking, or whatever it might be, and they don't belong here, or they don't want to participate, or they're too late, or whatever the case may be, I'm thinking that that individual, whether it's he or she, should compensate the taxpayer for that one, if they leave before the 1-year service at least, because they're on a 4-year term. And if they leave before 1 year, they wasted everybody's time, and they slowed down government in the process. So I think that they should be penalized. And I don't know if it's against the law. That would be a question to you, Mr. City Attorney, if we could pay some kind of a penalize on any elected official that's elected to office that spends that kind of money getting in, taxpayer money, and that we can take it off their check before the last day.
I think there's different circumstances, so.
And then, again, Mr. Mayor, let me finish. And I would say due to health,
Yeah.
or due to medical reasons, or due to death, I would hope that those would be included in there. But other than that, I think you're gonna need to run your business, or whatever excuse it might be. I think that they should have thought about that a long time before they started running for office.
I don't know that we
It's a
have
commitment.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a good basis to be able to charge them for election costs in the city, but there could be a provision in there that they waive their income by the city as their councilor income if they don't complete 1 full year, with the exception of death or health-related things. You could do something like that where they, if they quit within before 1 year of service, then they waive all of their compensation by the city for their council term.
Well, they're going to waive it anyway. They're not.
They're going to waive it.
They're going to waive. I mean, you're not going to pay them. So what are they waiving?
Well, no. Let's say somebody came in and they decide that they got in here.
And they just don't do the job.
They stayed for 6 months and they said, "Okay, I'm out of here. This is not for me."
Yeah.
The city would have a right at that point to say, well, all that compensation you've been paid for the last 6 months, you've just waived it, and now you have to pay it back to the city because
Oh, I see what you're saying.
it's like an automatic waiver if you don't complete your first.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to look into that. I'm not telling you that that's above board, but that's what we have to look at, something like that, because there's nothing allowing for the city to have a cause of action against somebody for election-related expenses.
Right.
All I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that we're having everybody be accountable for fundings and for everything else. And we ourselves got to be accountable too.
How often has that happened?
Well, as far as I know, probably about twice. 2 or 3
Twice?
times, yeah.
Mr. Romero?
For whatever reason.
And I think, Councilor, I agree with that, but I think now going back to the simple majority, that's probably going to change because let's say somebody runs in that first election. They stay 3 months. Somebody will get appointed. There won't be an election till the next regular schedule, so we're not going to have that special runoff that can cost that additional fee. Am I right? So we won't run into the situation that we ran in this time.
Yeah, that would eliminate
Yes, because we,
a runoff, because
we
you don't have a
we had, I
runoff.
mean, the situation is when we had a
Correct.
special runoff, the special runoff, we know how much it was. So that's where, had it happened in a regular, it wouldn't, I mean, it wouldn't have cost us anything more than what we were already having the election anyway.
Correct.
So I think by going to the simple majority, I don't think we're gonna,
Run into that problem.
because somebody will be appointed and the next election isn't gonna be a special election, it's going to be a regular election that we're gonna be paying for it. So that special cost of that special election won't be around anymore.
Correct.
Am I right? Am I right?
Yes.
The last thing that I would just draw you guys' attention to is that in section 2.01, it specifically says the city shall be governed by a mayor-council form of government, together with an appointment of a city manager as provided by state law and except as otherwise provided in this charter. I suggest you put it out to the residents to delete that entire sentence, and the reason why is because mayor-council form of government is an actual term of art, which means it's a form of government that we don't have. We have a home rule municipality, which is distinctly different in law than mayor-council form of government. I understand what they were trying to say. What they're trying to say is, we're going to have a home rule municipality, but it's going to be a mayor and council. I get that's what they were trying to say, but the way they phrased it, they're confusing two terms, because a mayor-council form of government is a specifically defined form of government in law that's different than what we have. And we should not have in our charter that we're a mayor-council form of government. By taking it out, it doesn't diminish
Right.
the council's ability in any way. It doesn't change our
It's just
form
that
of
we're not
government.
functioning as a.
We're not functioning as a mayor-council form of government,
Home rule.
and that should not be in our charter.
But there's different forms of government that can follow under that, right?
But we're not.
No, a mayor-council form of government is like what Rio Rancho has.
Yeah.
It's not what we have.
We have mayor,
home rule.
council,
So the mayor
manager.
has the vote.
No, we have home
Mhm.
rule.
So the mayor has the vote.
I don't know, I don't remember whether a mayor has a vote in that particular form of government. All I'm saying is mayor-council form of government is a specific legal term, and that's not what we have here in Las Vegas.
That is true.
That's the one correction.
On that item, Scott, could you check the municipal league?
Yep.
To make sure that.
All right. Thank you. Next order of business. So how do we do this? We have a motion to move forward with the others?
Are you guys done, or is there more you want to bring forward?
I have one more item on here. I just want to make sure that, in the commission, their suggestions and recommendations, that they go to our city attorney and our city manager for review. And if there's anything that we're not doing on there that we should be doing, could you please inform us? Because I think we're abiding by most of that stuff. But, again, we asked for charter amendments. These are recommendations and suggestions. So I ask that list go to the city manager and the attorney and review.
And what I anticipated we would do is we would take the oral direction you've given us tonight, we would compile those into questions that would go on the ballot. I would review them, city manager would review them, city clerk would review them to make sure that internally they're where they need to be. We would send them off to, we have counsel now who's going to be reviewing these, outside counsel, that's not me. And then when we get them back from that attorney, then we present them to you guys, say, does this look good?
As prepared amendments.
And then they would be prepared for you guys to vote on them and say, yes, we want to put these on the.
So when we get them, they'll be already prepared amendments that we don't.
They should be formatted and everything.
And I agree with all that, except that I would want the public's input from this day on for the next 9 days. And then do follow your process. And if there's any public input, then if there's something that's very important, so whatever, you can bring it back to us and then follow through on that process.
Either that or I'm sorry, Cassandra, I'll get to you, I'm sorry. We can also get them back to us in a Word-ready document. Those go to public input. The public then has an input on what we prepare it.
Yes.
Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as they have a time period to give any comments or, that's just my thought.
Yep.
Before it goes to legal
Yeah,
counsel
Cassandra.
or another attorney for it.
Cassandra?
Mr. Mayor and Council, it'll be in the form of a resolution that you'll have to approve.
Okay. David?
One other question. Cassandra, if it serves me right and correct, I believe that the Charter Commission meetings are considered part of a public input. We had,
I see.
every single one of those meetings was an opportunity for public
Yes.
meetings. So, we could still decide more, but to note that right now, we have had that opportunity for even council meetings tonight.
That's correct.
All these times that we've addressed the charter, we've had, if you count 6, 7 meetings that they met, we've discussed the charter a couple of times, so there's already been 7, 8 times that the public has already had that opportunity. It was publicized in the newspaper, and we have had recommendations from individuals. I know, to us, so for the most part, I think that we've done a good job as far as public input. It's up to you guys, but
Yeah.
I think each one of these meetings has counted towards the public input.
I got you.
And I understand all that, Councilman Romero, but I would still like, it's been a work in progress.
Yeah.
And now after he gets us the whole shebang, there'll be a document that they can review. And I would ask that you put it on the website for review, because people have asked me, well, where is it on the website? We don't find it.
The only thing is if they review and they comment on it,
The website,
or anywhere.
well, that's the point, is they need to comment.
Well,
It'll be in the form of a resolution, as Cassandra said. It'll be available on our next, on the agenda where it comes before you, so there'll be
Right.
plenty of opportunity for everybody to see what it is.
We're proposing.
Again.
Right.
That's good.
Very well.
So,
With that, I make a motion to give direction to staff to follow up with the document with the recommended changes that were given.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero. I'll entertain a second.
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Rodriguez. Roll call, please.
Councilor Ulibarri Jr.,
yes.
Councilor Montoya,
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Romero.
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Romero, a second by Councilor Rodriguez. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Cassandra. Next order of business.
If there's a need for executive session, if not, adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to take a moment to wish our colleague, Councilman Romero, happy birthday tomorrow. We won't be, but he's going to be 29 years old. Happy birthday, senor.
Happy birthday.
Motion to adjourn.
Happy birthday. There's a motion on the floor to adjourn. I'll
Second.
entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mas.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Councilor Romero,
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez,
Yes.
Councilor Montoya,
Yes.
Councilor Ulibarri Jr.
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Ulibarri Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.